Woo! The poor little rabbit was still being bullied and emitted lovely sounds in the room, as if her mouth was blocked by something. Outside the door, Robin licked the ice cream softly. As for Huayu, she quietly released the holy beetle from her bodice. Chirp, chirp. The sound of cicadas echoed around this small shrine. The temperature seemed to be getting hotter. Such a peaceful future. Is it true? Is this the future I longed for in my heart? The guardian of the balance, the observer of all things, the watcher at the end of the hourglass of time. Is it my delusion that distorted the result of divination and let me see such a future? Can I really get such a future after being surrounded by robins? Standing next to herself in the future, Robin fell into deep thought. The future can be changed, but such a future. She took a last glance at herself sitting in the shattered shrine, blushing and licking the sweet ice cream. A complex expression appeared on Robin's face, and her body began to disappear little by little in this summer-like, fantastic future. Will such a future really come true? With a trace of expectation and a trace of confusion, Robin finished the love divination. What's the result? She looked carefully at the mysterious augur in front of him. Will his future with Huahu be happy? Are you asking about your future with your childhood sweetheart? Robin, who had not yet fully awakened from the sweet and shameful future, looked at the black-haired maid with a subtle forced smile.
Yes.
She gazed at the mysterious augur's face with expectations. From Mayer's judgment, this was a talented, strong augur. If she hadn't observed part of his future, she would not have been injured. Therefore, it was his gift to help her use a seed. I think you're going to become popular in the future. Robin tried to think over her sentences. She wasn't just popular, but had captured everyone's heart in the future she just saw. Even she herself was one of the victims. No, I won't let this future come true. She indeed enjoyed this peaceful and sweet future with close friends, but she had no intention of joining the Starwing Knights and even be bullied like the little rabbit in the room in the future. Well, she had decided to stay away from shrines from now on. She would never fall into the black-haired maid's hands. As for the maid's poor childhood sweetheart, based on what she saw in the future, her childhood sweetheart was destined to be a loser. Is it true? Seeing the mysterious augur hesitating in front of him, she blushed. Become popular. Isn't this what happened in those days when May practiced the closed-mouth Zen? Isn't it what happened when I was playing Stargo on the Starry Sky chessboard? Yes, watch out. Don't be too reckless. Robin found her heart was beating faster and faster, more than usual. What happened? What happened to my body? Just by holding the maid's hand and feeling each other's body temperature, something invisible jumped in Robin's chest. It seemed that both her body and heart were making cheers. You are dying. You are dying. You are dying. When you look at the abyss is looking at you too. You can't look back, girl. Warning, warning, the grave is in front of you. The grave is in front of you. Red alert, red alert, red alert. The birds on Robin's shoulders cried desperately. They covered their eyes with their wings, as if they could not bear to look directly at the tragedy that would happen next. What's wrong with me? Feeling her heart beating faster and faster, Robin recalled the scene she saw in the shrine. Her cheeks became hotter and hotter. The tender sobbing voice, the small white feet, and the helpless appearance lingered in her mind. For a moment, she imagined that she had experienced something similar. It was clear that that future hadn't happened at all, but everything was so vivid in front of her eyes. Between her lips and tongue, there was still the lingering flavor of ice cream, and even the sweat was about to flow down from her forehead. Who killed the robin? Sparrows, sparrows, damn sparrows. She is already helpless. Noticing the abnormal state in Robin's body, the birds of the nightmare world whined together. The symptoms of May poisoning had started. It's strange. What's wrong with my body? Since she returned from the nightmare world and merged with the robins, she had never felt so light. After leaving the nightmare world with robins, she had cursed her fate countless times. Why is it me? Why did I survive, but had to face the fate that was worse than death? How unjust this fate is. Why did I have to choose Bloodstamen? There was no other reason. It was simply because apart from Bloodstamen, there was no place for her in any corner of the world. How many nights did she open her eyes and think everything was just a nightmare? But she could never go back. It was her destiny to accept the Robin's power, to coexist with the Robin, to walk in the endless god's domains with blood and killing. The Robin was killed, instinctively chasing the breath of death, and as the Robins hissed, she had witnessed endless death over and over again. As she watched death, the aura of the abyss in her body gradually eroded her body and mind. She was living, but unable to enjoy the beauty of life. She even began to regret that she had accepted the Robins and returned from the nightmare world. Why is it now? Feeling the strange beating of her heart, Robin was at a loss, like a lost child. Her heartbeat, at the day she came back from the nightmare world, was only about half of the speed compared to other people. This was price she must pay. If not with the Robins, she would have died long ago. However, as the weaker part of the partners, her body was not strong enough to resist the Robins' power. Every time she witnesses death, her body was closer to the Robins. Initially, she was not aware of this, thinking that she could still be in the human world like normal people. Soon, she found that her sense of existence was getting lower and lower. Many times she had completed the tasks, even the publishers of the tasks forgot what she looked like. It was like a deepening nightmare. She found that the cost of reversing life and death was almost unbearable. Ironically, everyone thought that this was because of her murderous secret skill, the unfortunate prophecy of the Robin, and called her a once-in-a-thousand-years genius. The lower her heart rate and sense of existence were, the higher her ranking in the 10 Leaves Alliance was. When her heartbeat reduced to 1/3 of common heart rate, she entered the top 100 list of the killers of the 10 Leaves Alliance. When her heartbeat reduced to 1/5 of common heart rate, she entered the top 100 list of the killers of the Eastern God's domain. The last time, she killed a poet, and at that time, her heart rate reduced to 1/10. The poet was just a mortal, but his admirers even contained legend-ranked females. No one could find any trace of murder from his death because he died in a duel with his rival. Unfortunately, the blessing of fate left him this time, because Robin was looking at him, witnessing the duel. After that, Robin's ranking immediately raised to top 10 on the list of killers. Robin's power was increasing as she witnessed death. The death of the poet brought Robin a stronger and more desperate power. Robin had a presentiment that if she continued to witness death, one day her heart would stop beating completely, and her blood would coagulate in her body. She would be in a state of neither dying nor living. Yes, she should have known it a long time ago, because that was the price of the Robin's power. That day, when she fell into the pool of blood, looking up at the sky that didn't belong to human beings, and praying to all existences who could hear her voice. God, Buddha, even if you are a devil, I don't want to die. As long as I can live, I will pay the price. God didn't respond to her, nor did Buddha hear her voice. Only the bloody birds came and wandered on her body. At that time, she was actually dead, but her soul was still wandering around her body, unwilling to leave, looking at the hole through her chest and crying. The bloody birds saw her soul, asked her, and tempted her. Do you want to continue living? Do you want to see the world again? Then accept us, accept our strength, our desire, our journey. Who killed the Robin? It's sparrows, sparrows. Take us to find sparrows. Revenge, revenge, revenge. Only blood can bring us rest. She promised, with nothing, that she had no choice but these robins. From then on, a girl who had dreamed of sunshine disappeared. A blood robin was born. Dong, dong, dong. What was this feeling of obtaining a long-forgotten treasure? My voice, little by little, she obtained the heartbeat she once had again. The girl cried with joy. Just the sound of her heartbeat had brought her infinite hope. Perhaps I really have an opportunity to meet a different future? Even though I have gone this far and to this extent, do I still have a chance to obtain happiness? Dong, dong, dong. It wasn't just her delusion. She clenched her fists and did nothing. She could feel that there was a heat flow bursting out in her body. It was like a tiny, tender leaf stubbornly drilled out from the frozen ground. It was changing something. Something that shouldn't appear has come. There should be no hope. If you are deceived by this, there is no remedy. Girl, what you see is not a hope, but a trap. Liar, liar, liar. Go away, go away, go away, go away. The birds were so noisy today that they looked like little girls who had been robbed of their beloved toys. It's a miracle. The miracle appears. Robin looked up and looked again at the black-haired maid. The more she observed, the more remarkable the maid was. Her long black hair looked as if it was with an incredible charm. Any person would be addicted at a glance. She had a perfect, quiet, and gentle face. Just standing there, she exuded a sense of elegance and mystery. Even the unknown ornaments hanging on the two sides of her hair looked very attractive. Hey, wait a minute. Sun-like smile? Perfect long hair? Beautiful jewelry like ornaments? This, isn't she? Comparing the age of the black-haired maid with that of the golden-haired princess beside her, it seemed that Robin had found some truth. Was it her that the robins predicted? Why didn't I notice it at first? Age of 16. Perfect black hair. Warm smile. The black-haired maid was clearly closer to the robin's prediction than the golden-haired princess. The princess above all princesses. The prince above all princes. Looking at Yunxi, Robin imagined him in a man's suit for a moment. Compared with the golden-haired princess who looked only 7 or 8 years old, it was obvious that the black-haired maid was closer to the image of a prince if she wore a man's clothes. So, from the very beginning, she had mistaken her goal. The biggest suspect who killed the disciple of Heaven Road's palace was her. More or less, she could imagine the reason. That disciple of Heaven Road's palace had a bad reputation actually. There were rumors that his relationship with his animal friend, the green hippo, was somewhat abnormal. It was not surprising to know that a person whose mind had been distorted to make many mistakes. Well, is there anything else? Being looked at by Robin with a complicated, confused, and even suspicious look, she felt himself like a criminal. They just pulled each other's hands, but he could interpret 1,000 different meanings from her eyes. We meet for the first time today, right? However, her adaptability to his seed seemed remarkable. From Yunxi's point of view, the seed of life that had just been planted seemed to have taken root and sprouted, trying to expand inside her body. It seemed that the small seed was stubbornly resisting some unknown power, and because of this, the potential of this seed had been maximized, and the power transmitted to Yunxi was unexpectedly strong. Moreover, unlike all the members of the Starwing Knights, the power of the mysterious augur carried a tinge of cold, which was incompatible with the warm breath of the members of the Starwing Knights. Yunxi didn't realize that this was actually the power of curse from the nightmare world, the power that could kill anyone without a sign. To Robin, she could find no way to resist the nightmare power, but to Yunxi, it was of no use at all. His body was blessed by the stars, as the star child. It couldn't do any harm to him. At this moment, the resuscitation of Robin's heartbeat was also due to this. The curse that mankind absolutely couldn't bear was dispelled by the seed Yunxi planted for her. That was what the bloody birds were dissatisfied with. Their hard-won toy, their vehicle used to travel in the real world, was stolen. Do you believe in fate? Do you believe that the future is doomed? Robin gazed at Yunxi's eyes and asked in an unquestionable voice. The answer would determine the rest of her life. Fate, it can be changed. Yunxi never doubted this. It was in order to change his fate, change the future, that he would inevitably be torn to pieces by his 4 ex-girlfriends, so that he could constantly strive in the past and would continue to strive for it in the future. Fate is something that can be changed. This was Yunxi's persistence, and also the only thing left in his blank memory of his previous life. I believe in fate and believe in future. Looking at Yunxi, Robin smiled and made a decision that would change her life. If what she saw in that future really had a tiny possibility to come true, she would be desperate to catch up and strive for this. Your future. It's extraordinary, prophecy. Maybe it doesn't work for you. Even so, I still want to tell you. Please treat the girl who likes you well. Never be too rude. Her prediction, is very accurate. Looking at Robin's back in the distance, White Lotus praised. The augurs of mysterious prediction. Sometimes they can really surprise me, except for her behavior of shaking Yunshi's hands for too long. Yes, I will be very popular in the future. Yunshi didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this moment. He has 4 terrible ex-girlfriends. If he was too popular in the future, how bad would his life become? When he left the small town, he was prepared to go to some remote god's domains where his ex-girlfriend's apostles couldn't find him. Unfortunately, being found and stopped by his invincible childhood sweetheart, his escape plan was over before it started. Well, it's very accurate. May, you are already very popular now. White Lotus squinted her eyes. The girls of the Starwing Knights and his childhood sweethearts, well, there were a lot of rivals. Nevertheless, all of them would eventually become losers. White Lotus had seen the future. I really don't know what this mysterious prediction is for. Is this really a prediction of the future? Red Lotus didn't believe the mysterious augur's prediction at all. She only believed her sister's predictions. If the calculations were wrong, it was absolutely not White Lotus' fault, but because there wasn't sufficient information. In a word, White Lotus wouldn't be wrong if she was wrong. It must be the world's fault. No matter how many enemies there are, I'll burn them all. Golden Crow Princess was a little jealous and made a terrifying speech. If one looked carefully, one could see flames burning in the deep side of her golden ruby-like pupils. Well, it was just a love divination. It was just a divination. Yunshi was sweating. As he racked his brains trying to change the topic, a familiar aura rose into the sky and even formed a red pillar of light. Someone is leveling up? White Lotus and Red Lotus raised their heads together, looking at the red pillar of light rising into the sky. It's not a common person. Red Lotus clearly felt the power contained in this pillar of light. It was powerful and even gave her an enigmatic feeling. In that direction, it's the Battle Gods Championship Contest. White Lotus pinched her finger and calculated. Today is indeed the day of the qualifying competition of the Battle Gods Championship Contest. Roar! Next to the Pillar of Light, another powerful, steel-like aura burst out. Looks like the qualifying competition is interesting. Why don't you go and have a look? White Lotus showed a mysterious smile towards Yunshi. Maybe you can meet some people you know there. Yunshi nodded. He didn't know many people who would take part in the qualifying competition of the Battle Gods Championship Contest. Hua. He hadn't seen her lately. Did she go to take part in the qualifying competition of the Battle Gods Championship Contest? As the largest martial arts championship contest in the Endless Gods domains, the battles on the championship contest were far more fierce than ordinary people's imagination. There were thousands of battles every day in different gods domains. The qualifying competition was a stage for the newcomers of the Battle Gods Championship Contest. Many of the strongest players had come to the fore in this stage and become world-famous masters step by step. From the mortal rank to the hero rank, any contestant could join in the qualifying contest. After winning enough matches, they could take part in the ranking competition. Of course, legend-ranked beings didn't need to participate in the qualifying competition. They could directly go to take part in the ranking competition, and they would absolutely not encounter any hero-ranked opponents. Whether it was the qualifying competition or the ranking competition, nothing was dependent on race or origin, but only on strength. As the Seven Towers witnessed, the two sides gambled on all they had. As long as there were the projections of the towers, there must be the entrance of the Battle Gods Championship Contest. Originally, White Lotus Sword Domain was not qualified to apply for the entrance of the Battle Gods Championship Contest. However, the invincible Battle God was from this sword domain. Therefore, the Battle Gods Championship Contest was naturally opening to this small sword domain. However, the contestants from the White Lotus Sword Domain weren't too strong. Most of them were only at the mortal rank. There were rarely the battles between hero-ranked contestants. Today, an exception appeared. Boom. Boom, boom. The tremendous sound was still echoing in the sky. More and more people had been attracted by the rising pillar of light and flocked to the Battle Gods Championship Contest. At this moment, in the Battle Gods Championship Contest, two figures were confronting each other. There was a great difference between the two people. One side was a giant man who was nearly 5 meters tall and had strange reddish skin and lion-like hair. The giant man had huge locks on his shoulders and neck, and his hands were wearing a pair of steel gloves up to half meters thick, which made him look like a giant beast armed with teeth. The lines of his skin gave people an unnatural feeling of roughness, which looked like the dyed red skin of a fierce beast. His eyes were shining brilliantly, which accorded with all people's imagination of the word strong. He is from the northern god's domain, the disciple of the red steel genre. He should have a part of the bloodline of some giant. As far as I know, the redder the skins of the members of the red steel genre are, and the heavier their restraints are, the stronger their strength will be. Red Lotus saw through the giant man's identity and bloodline at a glance. It was not surprising to guess his identity, because the characters of the members of the red steel genre were too obvious. They were all over 2 meters tall and wore heavy restraints. Unless they were facing the critical moment of life and death, they would never take off the restraints. For them, fighting with restraints was as easy as breathing, and it was an extremely cruel method of austerity. As for the redskin, it was said that it was because of their special secret skill. They needed to change the structure of the skin to dissipate heat. The name of red steel came from their appearance and fighting style. The goal of their genre is to acquire the gift of God, rigid body. Rigid body? Yunshi recalled the two godlike talents teacher Kasina told him, rigid body and soft body. Yunshi himself had soft body, just like his teacher Kasina. He was very suitable for Kasina's battle god genre. This was the first time he saw a hero-ranked person who had rigid body. Isn't rigid body innate? Yunshi's soft body was from the blessing of Hydra, so he didn't understand how rare it was. In addition, he had also acquired the diamond body from Mu Mu's seed, so he had little knowledge of godlike talents. How can that be possible? Even among real giants, rigid body is an extremely rare bloodline. This giant man has only a part of the bloodline of a giant. The probability of being born with rigid body is basically 0 for him. Red Lotus shook her head and looked at Yunshi with contempt. The ultimate goal of the red steel genre is to condense rigid body from day to day. The reason for wearing those huge restraints and metal boxers is not for defense, but for oppressing their own bodies, pushing the potential of their flesh and blood to the limit. All the masters of this genre are regular visitors of the Battle Gods Championship contest. As long as you took part in the Battle Gods Championship contest, you would meet their members sooner or later. But I didn't expect that his opponent would be. Red Lotus and White Lotus looked at the figure whose height wasn't even taller than the giant man's waist. Yes, no wonder I haven't seen her these days. She came to the qualifying competition. Yunshi looked at the girl standing opposite the giant man with a broken sword in her hand. She had calm eyes, slender body, black and white robe. Her appearance was slightly different today, but there was no doubt that she was the deputy leader of the Starwing Knights, Xiao Qiao. At this moment, her body was wrapped with a faint red light, which was exactly the same as the red pillar of light rising into the sky just now. Undoubtedly, she was the person who just leveled up to the hero rank. Over the past few days, Xiao Qiao had not been defeated even once in the competitions at the mortal rank. Finally, she met this red steel master who happened to pass here. Even though the hero-ranked giant man had suppressed his own rank to the mortal rank, however, just with the purest physical strength, the giant man called Red Stone had forced Xiao Qiao to despair. Then, it was the scene Yunshi, Red Lotus, and White Lotus saw just now. After being pushed into despair, Xiao Qiao broke through the boundaries between the mortal rank and the hero rank, releasing her amazing potential. At this moment, although her sword had long been broken, her aura was strong enough to let Red Stone burst out his real strength. Hiss. Jie. Hiss. Jie. Feeling the tremendous pressure, Red Stone twisted his neck, and the muscles all over his body trembled. It's not fear, it's excitement. Just like the motto of the red steel genre, only those who cross the real horror of life and death are entitled to peep into the mystery of rigid body. Puff. Ha. He was using the basic secret skill of the red steel genre, lava breathing. Lava breathing, lava skin, and blood of red steel were the three core secrets in the practice of the red steel genre, and they were closely related and inherited in one continuous line. Only by practicing all three secrets to the limit were they able to approach and open the door of rigid body. Red Stone had practiced lava skin and blood of red steel to the limit, but his practice of lava breathing was still in its infancy. This was the reason why he went to the Eastern Gods domain and took part in the Battle Gods Championship contest. Ka, ka, ka. The extreme heat of his skin almost burned the huge locks that Red Stone wore, especially the huge steel gloves. They were even emitting bursts of white smoke from them. At this moment, Red Stone looked like a volcano about to erupt. Compared with just before now, he looked like a completely different person. However, Xiao Chao's change was bigger and more obvious than him. Now, perhaps no one could recognize that the current Xiao Chao was the same ordinary girl when she just joined the Starwing Knights. Her freckled face had become flawless, her slender and healthy body had become higher, and her hands and feet had become more slender and powerful. Even her skin presented an exceptionally beautiful healthy color. On her forehead, a strange diamond-shaped mark naturally appeared, giving her a sense of mystery. After entering the hero rank, Xiao Chao's innocence of childhood finally disappeared. Now the girl standing on the stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest was a brand new Xiao Chao, the incarnation of heroic. The only thing still unchanged was probably only the size of her chest. Her breasts were still so small and exquisite. Even Yun she could recall the time when he was on the tropical island, looking at Xiao Chao riding a killer whale to break the waves on the sea. In the past, as a civilian girl from a common family, Xiao Chao could already compete with Hua Yu's white golden rose bloodline. At this moment, Xiao Chao was one step ahead of Hua Yu, entering the hero rank earlier than Hua Yu. From a mortal to a hero, the gap could make many people feel despaired. This was a step that all intelligent creatures wanted to take to enter the higher realm. Only those who stepped out on this step were qualified to be the strongest in the endless gods' domains. God weapon, bloodline, secret skill, all the foundations came from this step. If you were not a hero, you were not even qualified to peep at the gate of that extraordinary world. Throughout the ages, only heroes could be remembered and praised, so people called it the hero rank. At this moment, another hero was born on the stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest. Through the special connection between himself and Xiao Chao, Yun Shi immediately understood what road Xiao Chao had stepped on. Xiao Chao's seed. Mortal sword, perfect. The person who held this sword had practiced the mortal sword skill to the limit. Due to that, the person would be able to learn any high-level sword skills 2 times faster than ordinary people. Mind's eye, perfect, a kind of insight learning from practice and exercise. It could help the owner analyze the environment and catch the tiniest opportunity to reverse a bad situation. Combat intuition, awaken. This ability could help the owner analyze the battle trend and respond to it in advance. At any time, the owner of this ability could use 100% strength. Persevering heart. The grass-like girl has a persevering heart. It can help her open the door to a higher rank. The Great Road, totally opened in the long river of fate. Some people were blessed by the goddess of fortune. Even if they are still mortals, they were fated to create legends. Favored soul. The girl was blessed by the gods. More than one god was looking at her. All the incomplete states before had all become perfect now. The Great Road had totally opened and she obtained a new title, Favored Soul. The once ordinary girl finally opened her door to the extraordinary world and embarked on her road of cultivation. Being blessed by fate, Xiao Chao had begun to create her legend, and Yun Shi and the people around the stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest were witnessing this legend. Looking at Xiao Chao at this moment, Yun Shi had a feeling that he harvested the most from Xiao Chao's seed amongst all the members of the Starwing Knights. If the feedback to Yun Shi from Xiao Chao's seed before was 1, then now, her seed could feedback him 100 times more experience than usual. This meant that Xiao Chao's combat power may have increased more than 100 times after she had reached the hero rank. This was the gap between the mortal rank and the hero rank. The gap was so desperate A hero-ranked being could almost ignore the army of mortals and destroy a kingdom alone. If Xiao Qiao obtained a god weapon, her combat power could be stronger and more terrible. Regardless of Huahua, Xiao Qiao's talent was probably the highest amongst all the girls Yuan she had ever met. Only by experiencing her power personally, one could really understand how terrible Xiao Qiao's talent was. At this moment, Red Stone, the master of the red steel genre, was probably the only person who could understand Yuan Shi's feeling here. Puff. Ha. With hot gasps and violent heartbeats, Red Stone opened his mouth and spat out a sulfur-colored breath. At the moment, he looked like a devil in hell, because his skin was as red as bleeding and there were flaming lines constantly appearing around his body. Even though he had used all the 3 secret skills of the red steel genre, lava breathing, lava skin, and blood of red steel, he couldn't stop the shock from his heart. The world was so big that nothing was too strange to happen. He had always listened to the ancestors of his clan describe the geniuses they had seen and boast that they had fought against these extraordinary geniuses. Unexpectedly, today he also met a genius who couldn't be described by common sense. P.S. The author didn't write C541, so there is no C541. Yuan Shi saw it through Xiao Qiao's seed. It was a brand new world. It was the world in Xiao Qiao's eyes, clear and distinct, but slightly different from the normal world. The most obvious thing was that through Xiao Qiao's eyes, he clearly saw the circulation route of blood in the body of the master of the red steel genre, and the dozens of flaws on his seemingly indestructible skin. These flaws were right under those restraints, as well as in the huge steel gloves on both hands. It seemed that he knew his weaknesses well, so he firmly protected these weaknesses with restraints and steel gloves. However, weaknesses are weaknesses. The real rigid body doesn't have these weaknesses. So many weaknesses and flaws meant that the seemingly invincible master's physique was still far inferior to the real rigid body. Seeing through her opponent's weaknesses was one of the abilities Xiao Qiao acquired after she advanced into the realm of the hero rank, which was as natural as breathing for her now. It wasn't difficult to imagine that people with this talent and ability would obtain great advantage in battles. Now what Xiao Qiao was still short of was only one god weapon that was suitable for her. Good. Very good. I'm glad to meet such an opponent. Red Stone raised his fists and hit them together violently. 2 huge steel gloves bumped and made a deafening metal roar. This was the signal that Red Stone was really into a full-blown combat state at this moment. When using the 3 secret skills, lava breathing, lava skin, and blood of red steel together, they would cause a great burden on the body. Even though Red Stone had a part of the bloodline of the giants, he wasn't an exception. Apart from the person who had rigid body, there was a time limit for any person who was using the 3 secret skills together. The time that Red Stone could use the 3 secret skills was 5 minutes. 5 minutes seemed to be short, but most disciples of the red steel genre couldn't reach this time in their lifetime. Most disciples of the red steel genre could only use the 3 secret skills together for 3 minutes, but even so, there weren't many strong hero-ranked beings who could withstand their fierce attacks for 3 minutes. When facing the full attack of the disciples of the red steel genre, most people would try their best to run away with the 3 minutes and launch a counterattack after that. Whizzing! Huge white smoke soared up from Red Stone's hair. In the next moment, he jumped up at a speed that was absolutely inconsistent with his huge body. His hands were clasped together, and the whole person was like a giant hammer falling from the sky, smashing fiercely at Xiao Qiao. What should I do if I'm facing his attack? Yuan Shi tried to imagine himself confronted with such a fierce blow, and found that he had no means to confront the attack directly. Driving the Crane Wing's twin swords to the fastest speed to dodge this attack, this was the only way Yuan Shi could think of to avoid this blow. His swordsman career hadn't yet entered the hero rank, so he didn't have the power to fight against such a frantic strength now. Xiao Qiao's choice was to bend her body, just like grass blown down by a strong wind. She steadfastly drew out her sword. The long sword, which had already been scarred, broke off from the center with a crisp noise under Red Stone's attack. Too bad. Yuan Shi knew that Xiao Qiao was a pure swordsman. If she lost her sword, her fighting power would be greatly reduced. Moreover, Xiao Chao's sword was special to her. She didn't throw it away, although it had been broken in the last battle with Huayu. Now, it was totally broken. This result wasn't too surprising. After all, it was just a common iron sword that had no quality to withstand the power of the hero rank. Xiao Chao watched her sword breaking under the blow with a sad look, but she still held it tightly in her hand. Although the sword in her hand was broken, the sword in her heart was not broken yet. Instantly, the remaining half-broken sword in her hand glowed with brand a new brilliance, chopping on red stone steel gloves. Hiss! Sparks splashed on the gloves made of super metal, which was obviously not what a common iron sword could cause. Sword aura. Red Lotus looked at the sword in Xiao Chao's hands in surprise. Her will strengthen the essence of the sword and the strength of the blade. White Lotus saw more clearly than Red Lotus and made a more accurate judgment. She went a step further and felt the indomitable breath emanating from the blade of the sword. Even though this sword was just a common iron sword that only a novice would use. However, after it accompanied Xiao Chao growing up, leaving the village, attending the entrance examinations of the Sword Palace, until now, she finally stepped on the battlefield belonging to the hero rank. It had been broken once in Xiao Chao's battle with Huayu. After that, Xiao Chao asked the blacksmith to reforge it, and used this ordinary iron sword to fight against one opponent after another. This time, it finally suffered a fatal blow. Even if Xiao Chao asked the blacksmith to reforge it again, it would be meaningless. The sword had reached the end of its own limit. She could even feel that the broken sword was emitting a sense of sadness. Part of the most precious memories in Xiao Chao's heart was disappearing. It could no longer move forward with Xiao Chao anymore. This iron sword was just a common sword forged by a common blacksmith. It was not qualified to possess a sword soul. Even its material was so poor that it had only one advantage: durable. Only newbie civilian swordsmen would use such a weapon. The children of noble families would never use such poor weapons. However, such a poor weapon had accompanied Xiao Chao through night after night, season after season, and finally came to the world-renowned Battle Gods Championship contest. The weapons of the opponents Xiao Chao had defeated were countless times more valuable than it. As a common iron sword for newbies, the mission of this sword had long been accomplished and far surpassed. The world Xiao Chao was going to enter was destined to be out of touch with this sword. Today was the last day Xiao Chao used it. Yunxi noticed this, and Xiao Chao noticed it too. Boom! With a blow from his fist, Red Stone beat Xiao Chao back and then shook his head. Change your sword. It limits your strength. Xiao Chao gazed at the iron sword in disintegration even though it had been strengthened by her hero-ranked power. It can't fight anymore. Not only the appearance of the sword, but also the basic particles that make up the sword was dissolving and disappearing under Red Stone's violent attack before. Compared to Red Stone's spirit weapons, his steel gloves, it was a miracle that this common iron sword could hold up until now. Even though Xiao Chao had used the sword to cut through the thick steel gloves many times. But these scratches have already begun to self-repair at a fast speed. This was the special ability of the pair of spirit weapons. I have a sword here, a good sword. Wait, I have a big sword here. Master, use my sword. Under the stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest, many businessmen shouted, and some of them even directly took out their swords. Of course, none of the swords were god weapons. But apart from that, there were all top-level spirit weapons. Xiao Chao looked silently at the broken sword in her hand. No, it was overpraised to call it broken sword now. It was actually just a combination of fragments. Without Xiao Chao's hero-ranked power, the sword would have turned into ashes and disappeared. The sword belonging to Xiao Chao was actually dead. Sorry, Xiao Chao looked at it sadly, but soon her eyes became more resolute. Please, I need you to keep fighting with me. There are still a lot of opponents. Yunxi felt that from Xiao Chao's body, some unspeakable firm will was spreading. Like countless trampled little grasses, even if everyone had given up, Xiao Chao, grass, would never give up. Why do I need to change my sword? Is it because the sword is not hard enough? Then, the problem would be very simple. Let her make it hard enough. Just like she grew up from a first-ranked female swordsman to a hero-ranked female swordsman, this time, it was her turn to help the sword that had been growing with her. Can it be? She wants to. She guessed what Xiao Qiao would do. It would be an unimaginable choice to any ordinary people. She had numerous choices. After stepping into the hero rank, countless forces would be willing to provide her the best weapons and the best equipment. However, Xiao Qiao didn't want any of them. The only sword she chose was this sword. The other swords, no matter how gorgeous, sharp, or extraordinary they are not her swords. I have only one sword. It was a decision and a declaration. The girl whose life was like a grass chose an ordinary iron sword. This was her sword. From now on, your name is Gladiolus. Gladiolus was a common plant with sharp blades. It was the same as the desert cactus. Even in an extremely harsh environment, it could strive to grow up. For Xiao Qiao, there was no weapon more suitable for herself than such a sword. Don't cry. I'll fix you. The once broken, melted, and even disintegrated iron fragments began to gather toward Xiao Qiao's position. Redstone stared at the magical scene, and all his muscles trembled. She is casting her own god weapon. She is giving her weapon life. Using her fantasy, this should be the realm of gods. White Lotus murmured to herself, looking at the countless particles flying into Xiao Qiao's palms. Most god weapons created by humans needed to obtain history and connotation before they could really appear in the world. Only very few people could make a god weapon without the wash of time, and all of them were beloved by the rules of the world. Undoubtedly, Xiao Qiao was one of them who were beloved by the world. With such a favor of the world, she could easily obtain numerous spirit weapons whose weapon souls wanted to become a god weapon. However, Xiao Qiao chose none of them but the common iron sword, and she would keep using this common iron sword henceforth. Xiao Qiao and Gladiolus were a pair of combinations that could grow up and become strong together. Gladiolus. Hello. After the recasting, the sword Gladiolus looked exactly the same as before, but its internal essence had changed dramatically. It was no longer a common iron sword, but a god weapon that had had its real name. In front of its master, the sword Gladiolus gave out a pleasant and crisp sound in return for its master's voice. A layer of brilliant light flowed on the sword body of Gladiolus, reflecting Xiao Qiao's calm and determined eyes. Let's fight. Feeling the strong aura from Xiao Qiao's sword, Redstone's eyes turned red. Don't get him wrong, he didn't feel angry, but it was a show of extreme excitement. The strongest opponent was precisely the goal pursued by all disciples of the red steel genre. Because the sword didn't contain any special history and connotation, apart from hardness, Gladiolus didn't have any special ability. But for Xiao Qiao, that was enough. With her sword, she could fight. She fought and she would win. Magnetic force. Redstone displayed the secret skill of his steel gloves. Although the steel gloves were a pair of god weapons, they had a special, mysterious power that even the real god weapons didn't possess. Magnetic force. His steel gloves could store strong magnetic field force. Usually, as a pair of restraints, the magnetic force could make the steel gloves to become 10 times heavier for Redstone to practice his body, and when fighting, he could release the magnetic force to absorb his opponent's weapons. Xiao Qiao's sword, Gladiolus, and her body were directly absorbed by this magnetic force together. Pa! From 3 meters away, Redstone raised his arms high and threw Xiao Qiao and her sword into the sky by controlling the magnetic force. At the same time, with a sudden step on his feet, he stepped out a big pit on the hard stage made of obsidian, and his body rushed into the sky. Burst! The tremendous magnetic force burst out in one breath, together with Redstone's amazing weight and strong strength, bearing down on Xiao Qiao's body like a mountain. Push people down with force. This was the core of the practice of the red steel genre. All the secret skills and equipment of the red steel genre were prepared for this purpose. Gravity and magnetism were the best ways for the masters of the red steel genre to suppress their opponent's speed and turn the battlefield into their own home court. For the first time meeting such an attack, Xiao Qiao had no experience for dealing with this and was at a disadvantage. Boom! Her body smashed on the obsidian ground. The gravitational field released by red stone transmitted into the ground, then exploded suddenly. Like the process of an earthquake, the ground vibrated continuously. Even though the ground was made of obsidian, it couldn't withstand the force of the continuous oscillation and eventually broke off like a broken string. The earth began to shake and tremble, and numerous dense cracks appeared on the black ground. Suddenly, there was a huge, muffled sound echoed between the sky and the earth. All the watchers under the stage had the delusion that the sky was falling and would hit the earth in an instant. The whole venue of the Battle Gods Championship contest seemed to be hit hard by an invisible giant hammer. Countless people were bounced up and then fell ashen. As for the obsidian stage, facing this attack, it was completely blown up. Push the opponent down with force. This was what the goal of the red steel genre. This was the strongest they pursued. The ultimate goal was to practice the body to the limit, reproducing the rigid body again. It was one of the red steel genre's secret skill called smashing the ground. The principle was to absorb the opponent by magnetic force, suppress the opponent by gravity field, then throw the opponent to the sky, and finally catch the opponent in the air to launch a lethal blow towards the earth. The most terrible thing about this tactic was that even if you knew exactly what was going to happen, you just couldn't avoid it. It was extremely difficult to get rid of this set of combo attacks for anyone during the period when the master of the red steel genre was still using the three secret skills. On the stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest, even those who were very fast and flexible would end up in tragedy once they were captured by the magnetic field. Those who thought that those red giants were just monsters who used brute force were all punched to death by them. In the dust, Red Stone's right fist pounded heavily on a seemingly ordinary iron sword. Did she block my attack? Red Stone looked at Xiao Qiao and his gravity field in surprise. As a high-level fighting skill of the red steel genre, it was a secret skill combining by three secret skills: magnetic attraction, gravity release, and ground crushing. Most hero-ranked people wouldn't adapt to this distorted gravity when they first encountered the restraint of 10 times gravity. 10 times of gravity wouldn't just make the muscles suffer 10 times pressure, including the most vulnerable human retinal nerve, internal organs, body fluid would suffer tremendous damage. For ordinary people, even a doubling of gravity could cause instantaneous death. The reason why Red Stone can withstand 10 times the pressure of gravity was that his three secret skills, lava breathing, lava skin, and blood of red steel, were all powerful secret skills related to body strengthening. Even so, Red Stone began to adapt from the most basic double gravity. From the mortal rank to the hero rank, after experiencing many life or death crises, his body finally adapted to the 10 times gravity and successfully mastered the secret skill, smashing the ground. Don't underestimate this secret skill. Although it only smashed a big hole on the ground, that was because the ground of the Battle Gods Championship contest was made of obsidian. Without a god weapon, only very few hero-ranked people could break the ground of the Battle Gods Championship contest. If Red Stone used this secret skill outside the stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest, it could even cause a small earthquake. Without the help of any god weapon, many 5th and 6th ranked people couldn't cause this damage. After all, not everyone could strengthen their bodies at all times like the disciples of the red steel genre. They didn't even remove the gravity field when they were sleeping. At the 4th rank, Red Stone had defeated countless hero-ranked people using this secret skill, smashing the ground. However, this wasn't the end of his attack. Why wasn't this secret skill called magnetic throwing, but smashing the ground? Because the most terrible attack would actually begin after the opponent was hit on the ground. Crush the earth. Red Stone roared, and his right fist turned into a huge palm, and his whole body seemed to have risen a little bit, reaching 3 meters tall. On his red skin, there were lava vapors rising and numerous blood vessels appeared on his body, making him look like a demon coming out of the volcano. 10 times gravity field. Compression. Turn around the magnetic field. The most terrible attack of smashing the ground had begun. Most of Red Stone's opponents would have been defeated when they were thrown to the ground. Only the strongest opponent whose body could quickly adapt to the 10 times gravity field would make Red Stone have to launch this attack. Boom. If the fall just now was as dull as a heavy hammer, then the smashing the ground now was like the bombardment of numerous heavy hammers on the ground. Compared with the astonishing shot just now, the attack this moment wasn't so powerful but was several times more terrible. In order to strengthen the body to the limit, Red Stone had already run all the 3 secret skills to the limit, and even then was fresh blood flowing out of his ears. The running time of the 3 secret skills, which could last for 5 minutes originally, was also rapidly shortened by the use of this skill. Boom, boom, boom. The whole of the space of the Battle Gods Championship contest was trembling, and a shrill voice was emitted. The stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest had never suffered such violent destruction since its construction was completed. Ding! A crisp sound of sword echoed in the air. It was a flying swallow, spreading its wings freely. Getting rid of the constraint of the magnetic field and gravity, the swallow flew up to the sky. Flying swallow sword? Red Lotus was dumbfounded, because she had seen this skill before. Isn't it one of the secret skills of the monster, Huahua? Not the same swallow. White Lotus shook her head. Although it looked very similar to Huahua's flying swallow sword, essentially, they were something quite different. Huahua's flying swallow sword was as fast as lightning. She could tear open the sky even in storms. That was because Huahua herself was too strong. The flying swallow she incarnated was so strong that she could disperse lightning and storm. Her swallow could tear up all her opponents. Xiao Chao's flying swallow was far from strong enough, so she paid more attention to defusing her opponent's strength in battles. She wasn't Huahua, whose body was strong enough to withstand 10 times gravity. The reason why Red Stone hadn't defeated Xiao Chao was because Xiao Chao's sword was cutting and destroying the seemingly perfect gravity field and counteracting most of its strength. It was not because Huahua's flying swallow wasn't perfect, but because Huahua's strength was already strong enough to defeat all enemies without using any special skills. Her flying swallow had long gone beyond the concept of perfection and become something else. On the contrary, Xiao Chao had not inherited any high-level sword skills. By analyzing the flying swallow planted into her body through Yunxi's seed, she reached a fantastic realm through her own efforts. Faced with the pressure of the gravity field, she needed to exert every part of her strength to the limit, so that she could find a slim chance of survival in the face of Red Stone's fierce attack. To this end, Xiao Chao's flying swallow was born. Only the sword Gladiolus, Xiao Chao's special god weapon, could cooperate with her so perfectly. Every second and every minute, her understanding and adaptability to the 10 times gravity field kept increasing, and her proficiency in cutting the gravity field had also become better and better. When Red Stone caught Xiao Chao and smashed her to the ground, the pressure of the gravity field to Xiao Chao had only left about half of it. Even so, she suffered a lot of injuries. As Red Stone's strongest secret skill, smashing the ground, was not something harmless to Xiao Chao. She had just entered the hero rank. 5 times gravity field was still too strong to her. After all, Xiao Chao was still a human being, not a semi-giant mixed with the blood of giant like Red Stone. However, it was at such a moment of life and death that Xiao Chao's understanding of gravity field increased at an amazing speed. 60%, 70%, 80%. A large amount of thick blood flowed out from the wounds on Red Stone's body. In terms of volume, the volume of the blood had long surpassed the volume that a normal human's body could have. If it was any other hero-ranked being, he should have died. The hero rank could indeed grant its owner extraordinary powers, but only very few hero-ranked beings could have an immortal body at this stage. Cough. Cough. Red Stone twisted his neck and took a deep breath. Suddenly, the muscles all over his body twisted and contracted. Then he staggered to his feet and slowly made a strange position in front of all the astonished people. He stood with his feet and raised his hands, as if he was lifting an invisible iron ball. But from his face, he looked confident. Then he fell into complete silence. Oh, this is the legendary, vigorous posture. Red Lotus watched Red Stone, who had stopped moving after making this posture. Well, that's the vigorous posture. This was also the first time for White Lotus to see this famous posture of the masters of the Red Steel genre. Whenever the masters of the Red Steel genre suffered serious injuries or was even dying, their bodies would naturally activate this posture. It was said that this posture could let them absorb the ubiquitous energy between heaven and earth to recover their wounds. As long as they could step on the earth and raise their hands to the sky, no matter how seriously the damage they had suffered, they wouldn't die immediately. Even if their hearts were penetrated through, as long as their heads hadn't been destroyed, then the vigorous posture could maintain their lives. Of course, if the injury was too serious or it was a curse, it could even take them many years to recover. According to history books, the longest record was 300 years. A master of the Red Steel genre was hit by a curse of a god weapon. He jumped into the sea to escape in a hurry and then launched a vigorous posture on the seabed in order to resist the erosion of the curse. As a result, 300 years had passed and the body of this master had turned into a nest of coral reefs and fish, and the assassin who cursed him had died many years ago before he finally woke up from keeping this posture. Of course, there was no curse on the blade of Xiao Chao's sword. The wounds on Red Stone's skin looked lethal, and the amount of blood he had bled could scare anyone. But judging from the healing speed of the wounds on his body, he could recover and wake up a few days later. Looking at Red Stone, who looked like a perfect statue at this moment, Xiao Chao put away her sword Gladiolus and merged it into her body. This was the advantage of having an exclusive god weapon. As the original creator of Gladiolus, the adaptability between Xiao Chao and Gladiolus was 100% from the beginning. She didn't need to cultivate the tacit understanding between her and her sword like other people who inherited ancient god weapons. Although as a god weapon, Gladiolus didn't have any special ability, Xiao Chao could exert all the power that Gladiolus had, which was already a realm that many people couldn't reach. Here you are. Xiao Chao jumped directly from the stage and walked towards Yunxi. Yunxi looked at Xiao Chao in surprise. After entering the hero rank, the freckles on her face disappeared completely, which made her look more pretty. He still remembered when he first saw Xiao Chao. She was just a common, thin girl who looked somewhat malnourished. Now, Xiao Chao's height had increased a little, and her hands and feet not only became more powerful, but also became more beautiful. The flexibility of her body had also increased significantly. Looking back on the girls of the Starwing Knights, this change seemed to happen not only to Xiao Chao, but to all the girls of the Starwing Knights. Congratulations, that swallow just now is beautiful. Yunxi's admiration was sincere. That inconspicuous little grass finally transformed into a beautiful flower today. The great road that belonged to Xiao Chao finally opened. Although Yunxi had known it would happen soon or later after he first saw Xiao Chao's seed. Even without his seed, it was only a matter of time for Xiao Chao. The mortal sword and the great road. Who was the god who had a partiality for Xiao Chao? May. I will still work hard. Xiao Chao looked at the twin witches and golden crown princess dispassionately. Her eyes were as quiet as a pool of clear water. Yes, it's a good thing to be stronger. The battle just now is wonderful. As a Cassina the battle god's admirer, Red Lotus appreciated Xiao Chao's performance on the stage just now. If it wasn't because of their special identities, Red Lotus would have stepped onto the stage, fighting with endless opponents from different gods' domains like what Xiao Chao did before. If it wasn't because of the tradition of the witches, she and White Lotus would have already left the White Lotus sword domain, creating their own legends in the endless gods' domains. Thanks. I still have a lot of shortcomings. Xiao Chao shook her head and didn't seem to be proud of her achievement. After all, she knew how strong Hua Hua was. With Hua Hua as a reference object, Xiao Chao didn't think that she could feel satisfied at all. Not just Xiao Chao, but all the girls of the Starwing Knights thought so after seeing Hua Hua's terrible power. How does it feel to enter the hero rank? Yunxi was curious about what kind of scenery she saw when she stepped into the realm of the hero rank. It was a little hot and numb, as if I was being electrified. That feeling. May, it was like when you touched my body, Xiao Chao said frankly. The next moment, Yunxi felt that the temperature around his body had suddenly risen by tens of degrees. May, did you touch her? Golden Crow Princess scowled darkly at Yunxi. Well, in fact, sweat streamed down Yunxi's face. It wasn't something that a child like her should know. Did May touch you or not? Golden Crow Princess turned around and asked Xiao Qiao. Yes, she touched me many times, very comfortable, Xiao Qiao answered honestly. Chapter 547. The Agreement with Golden Crow Princess. 1. Many times? Golden Crow Princess' eyes became hotter and hotter, and the temperature of the air rose sharply. If White Lotus hadn't enclosed this area by casting a magic spell, the people around them would have ignited. A god's anger was a real natural disaster for mortals. In order to calm Golden Crow Princess' anger, Yunxi had to stand up and hold her little body in his arms. It was really a thrilling thing to date a god. Xiao Qiao, you're killing me. Yunxi looked innocently at Xiao Qiao, who still didn't know what was happening. All of the girls of the Starwing Knights. May has touched them all. Xiao Qiao tilted her head. Apparently, she didn't grasp Yunxi's hint at all. Starwing Knights. Golden Crow Princess firmly remembered this name and tried to struggle out of Yunxi's arms. However, Yunxi had rich experience in capturing young girls. After gently grasping Golden Crow Princess' arms, he tickled her. Golden Crow Princess couldn't help but emit a series of silverbell-like laughter. The kid-tempered Golden Crow Princess' anger came fast and went quickly. Her attention was suddenly diverted because of this. Looking at Yunxi's skillful embrace, Red Lotus was dumbfounded. Golden Crow Princess is a god. How dare this maid tickle a god? And why does she look so skilled? Xiao Qiao looked at Golden Crow Princess with envy. Oh, it was a good thing that all girls of the Starwing Knights hoped to happen to themselves. I won't forget. Once I'm born, I will solve this problem right away. Golden Crow Princess puffed, biting on Yunxi's finger with a lovely flush of red on her little white face. You are mine. May? Yunxi helplessly watched the capricious Golden Crow Princess and was wondering whether he had just done another wrong thing. Master, don't be afraid. Anyway, you have trampled on so many boats. The nice boat won't happen even if you step on one more boat. Cheer up. Mayor encouraged Yunxi. If Master has a good relationship with Golden Crow Princess now, he will obtain a great advantage in the future. It wouldn't be wrong to treat her well now. If it wasn't because Golden Crow Princess looked too young now, she had already suggested Yunxi to. For Mayor, the human morals didn't exist at all in her eyes. Mayor's goal was never to help Yunxi become a gentleman, but to help him grow stronger and stronger, and eventually get rid of the fate of being separated into pieces by his 4 terrible ex-girlfriends. To this end, she would trample on all the moral principles of the human world and ignore all the ethical relations. Justice? What is that? Is it delicious? The child of stars doesn't need such a thing. Don't think that Mayor was just a common small dog. Although her strength was still insignificant, it was only because she was still in her infancy. Chapter 548. The Agreement with Golden Crow Princess. 2. May, do you want power? Golden Crow Princess tried to use her clumsy methods to capture Yunxi's heart. A golden red flame appeared in her palm. It was a kind of pure power of the sun, a part of her life. As long as Yunxi accepted this wisp of fire, she would share her life with him, and Yunxi's body would evolve uncontrollably towards the form of a sunwalker and eventually become the same sun as her. In this process, Yunxi would gradually lose his human posture, but in return, he would obtain eternal life and glory. It wasn't a tough choice for anyone, because no one would refuse the glory of the sun. The power of the gods was within the reach of Yunxi at this moment. As long as he nodded, as long as he reached out his hand, Golden Crow Princess would turn him into a sunwalker and even share her position as a god with him. As for the impact of 2 suns appearing in the sky, Golden Crow Princess didn't mind it at all. She wasn't a kind, fantastic creature who cared about what others thought. The power of the sun, thanks, but I'm not qualified to use it now. Yunxi shook his head. He knew that kind of power was extremely strong, but now he couldn't use it, nor should he use it. Holding a sealed SN drive was his limit for now. If he couldn't control the power of the sun, the same end in the battlefield of gods would happen to the whole of the White Lotus Sword domain. Infinite light and heat would melt the ground, cover the world, and lead to the end of all things. To do all this, only the power of a furnace, SN drive, was needed. That was to say, if he released the power in the sealed furnace in his hand, he could destroy the world. It doesn't matter. Just accept this, and you can go back to the Kunlun God's domain with me. My mother will be happy to see you, too. Golden Crow Princess said with confidence. The Kunlun God's domain. Yunshi looked at her with a mixed feeling. The Kunlun God's domain, the strongest God's domain in the Eastern God's domains. However, this was also an extremely closed God's domain. No one could even reach this God's domain through the star bridges. All the star bridges leading to the Kunlun God's domain had been cut off. Legend had it that you could only enter Kunlun God's domain by walking through a god weapon called Kunlun Mirror, which was controlled by the West Queen. For people living in the Eastern God's domains, the Kunlun God's domain was more like an ideal land in a fantasy than a real existing God's domain. According to legend, the free energies in the air of the Kunlun God's domain were thousands of times thicker than that in other normal worlds. This was the homeland of countless fantastic creatures. Phoenix, Inglong, Kirin, golden-winged ROC bird, Bifong, Bays. Every fantastic creature was a real legend-ranked being. Because of this, many people doubted the existence of the Kunlun God's domain. After all, the vast majority of people, including more than 90% of hero-ranked beings, had never touched any trace of the existence of the Kunlun God's domain. For Kunlun, Yunshi's impression had always remained in the stories his parents told him before he went to bed. If the Kunlun God's domain was just a story existing in Yunshi's mind, then now, the Golden Crow Princess stretched out her hand to him, proving that it wasn't just a story existing in people's mouths, but a real world, the homeland of Golden Crow Princess. As long as he held her hand, he could gain her life power and go to the Kunlun God's domain together with her. Everything looked so natural. Yunshi would never doubt Golden Crow Princess' sincerity. She would not deceive him. His intuition told him so. However, his intuition also told him that he must not go to the Kunlun God's domain now. Otherwise, some unexpected incidents would occur. If I let my mom see you, she would be very happy. Golden Crow Princess was still immersed in her great plan. Wasn't it because she wanted to see May? So if she went to this unknown sword domain, now that I see him, I can't let him go. I must get what I like. He was the pride of the princess of the Kunlun God's domain. Mother, West Queen, Yunshi imagined the scene if West Queen saw him and Golden Crow Princess together. Baby, you're back. Mom, I'm back with my lover. What? Who is this bastard? Execute him. Skin him and hang him on the top of the Kunlun mountain for 7 days and 7 nights. Yunshi shivered. Although it was just a less reliable inference, he believed that nothing good would happen if West Queen saw her little daughter bringing back an unknown man. Sorry, I can't go there now. After a chill, Yunshi decided to give up this option, even though it could let him boost his strength at the fastest speed. He couldn't go to the Kunlun God's domain now. It was no different from suicide. Chapter 549. The Agreement with Golden Crow Princess 3. Why? Golden Crow Princess looked extremely disappointed. The power of the sun. It's too early for me. Yunshi made an excuse, and it was indeed the truth. For him, who was just a common baker not long ago, it was too hard to believe that he would suddenly be in charge of the power of the sun. Although Golden Crow Princess promised that he could obtain the power of the sun just by taking her fire, Yunshi instinctively felt that things would not be so simple. He hadn't even crossed the threshold between the mortal rank and the hero rank. How could he reach the sky in a single bound, possessing the power of the god? Even with the help of the will of the stars, after experiencing several life-or-death trials, he just touched the door of the hero rank. In what way could a human being directly turn into a fantastic creature? Would that be really as easy as what Golden Crow Princess said? It's very simple, As long as you accept the fire of the sun and sleep with me in the egg for thousands of years, we can be born together in the Kunlun god's domain, and then you will become a new sun crow." With a relaxed expression on her face, Golden Crow Princess said something that made Yunshi feel both funny and annoyed. Ah, that's the time concept of a fantastic creature. A sleep could take them thousands of years. Indeed, Yunshi didn't doubt Golden Crow Princess' words. However, to him, this way of transforming his life form was still too difficult to accept. Moreover, if he slept thousands of years in the same egg with Golden Crow Princess, what could he do if his 4 terrible ex-girlfriends found him during this period? There would be no way for him to run away by that time. Therefore, even if it could really let him reach the legend rank easily, Yunshi wouldn't accept it. Moreover, as a human, thousands of years were too long for Yunshi. So, sorry, I can't accept your offer. I can only reach the legend rank by myself. Well, it wasn't because he was scared of his 4 terrible ex-girlfriends. It really was not. Yunshi showed a very sad look on his face and refused Golden Crow Princess once again. Why? If you want to become stronger, it's better to transform into a sun crow. Golden Crow Princess didn't understand what fate Yunshi was carrying, so she could not understand Yunshi's inexplicable choice at all. I'll try my best to entreat my mother to share half of my blood with you. You just need to close your eyes and fall asleep. As long as you open your eyes, you will become as beautiful as me. Then, we will fly and dance above the 33 heavens together. We will be the most shining couple. Ah, I can imagine this future. Yunshi raised his head as if he had seen the fantastic scene. If it wasn't because of his 4 terrible ex-girlfriends, it may become true. He had to refuse her with a lie. Although it was a shame to lie to such a child. However, he still had to lie. Even a decent gentleman sometimes needed to consider his speech according to the situation. Sorry, you are still young. Maybe you can't understand it. A real strong man can't take the road of getting power without any exertions. The power of the sun is not my first choice. Actually, he really had a feeling that the power of the sun was perfect for him. I have my own future. If there weren't those 4 ex-girlfriends, maybe I would really go with you. May, don't you like the sun? Golden Crow Princess looked like she was going to cry out. From birth till now, she had never known what rejection was. Even if she was going to crash the sky, her omnipotent mother would just laugh, and then use the Kunlun mirror to repair the sky. No, I like the sun. I like the little sun like you. However, I'm just a human. I haven't practiced the power belonging to the sun, because human beings cannot directly use the power of the sun. The sun is too powerful for us. She touched Golden Crow Princess' smooth cheek and dripped blood in his heart. What a pure, kind, innocent child. She is even willing to share half of her life with me. Yes, May really likes me. Golden Crow Princess didn't listen to a word she said after this sentence. I like the sun. I like the little sun like you. Anyone in the Kunlun god's domain didn't dare to call her little sun, except for West Queen. Children always dislike people to call them child. However, it wouldn't be a problem if it was Yunshi. Any praise from Yun-shi could make Golden Crow Princess feel happy from the bottom of her heart. Why? Just listening to his voice is making me so happy. If I can grow up in the egg with him, it would be 10 times, 100 times the happiness. It doesn't matter, even though he had refused me 3 times. From the beginning, Golden Crow Princess hadn't considered the option of going back alone. Are you kidding me? It's not easy to meet the person I like. It must be so-called fate. No matter how many fantastic creatures there are in the Kunlun god's domain, there can be no one more suitable for me than May. From the moment May summoned her on the starry sky chessboard, she had realized that this person was special to her. Nobody but him would do. I will accept no one except him. Even if she had to force him, she would take him back to the Kunlun god's domain. May. It may hurt, but it doesn't matter. It will be just a moment. Golden Crow Princess' eyes became dangerous, and behind her back, the pair of little golden red wings slowly emitted dangerous golden red particles. A small but delicate furnace, which was personally made by Yuan-shi, emerged on her shoulder, giving Yuan-shi a sense of great misfortune. What are you going to do to me with that furnace, drive? Its power could even kill a god. No, it's too dangerous. It's not a child's toy. May, even though you said so, I still want to go back into the egg together with you. I'm sure you'll like being the sun. Golden Crow Princess stood on her toes and held Yuan-shi's body with great strength. Even though this was only an incarnation, a god's strength wasn't something that Yuan-shi could break away from at this time. Wow, the princess is out of control. It's easy to invite the god, but difficult to send the god away. Looking at them from a distance, White Lotus sighed. Sometimes there will be such a bad god, and this time, it should have been the time for the witch to come forward. Give up, it's beyond our capability. Red Lotus looked happily at May, who had been captured by Golden Crow Princess. It couldn't be better to let the god take this black-haired maid away. In just one day, her White Lotus had become more and more strange. She really didn't understand why White Lotus and even Golden Crow Princess were infatuated with the maid. Now, Golden Crow Princess liked you so much that she would take you away. Farewell, May. I'll lay flowers on your tombstone. In the countless golden red particles that were flying, Golden Crow Princess' eyes became extremely firm. May elope with me. Hello. What kind of elopement is this? Obviously, you are going to capture me. Yuan-shi looked helplessly at Golden Crow Princess. Who can stop this little sun? If the furnace exploded in her hands, all of the White Lotus Sword domain will be done for. Let us go home. Golden Crow Princess opened her small wings, cheered heartily and shouted, May, let's go to my egg together. Boom. A red pillar of light rose to the sky and easily tore up the protection system of the White Lotus Sword Palace. In a twinkling of an eye, it flew to a higher place than the Sky Tower, heading for the battlefield of gods, where Golden Crow Princess' real body was. It's much too high. This was the first time for Yuan-shi to come to this altitude. Although he had entered the battlefield of gods, he was teleported to that place. He couldn't see such a landscape during that event. In the air at 100,000 meters, even the atmosphere became thinner. The vast mountains and oceans became as thin as the outline in the landscape painting. Is this the world in the eyes of fantastic creatures? Looking down from here, the White Lotus Sword domain is really small. Yuan-shi even saw the water god's fantasy island, where located in the center of the eye of the storm and surrounded by white mist. After releasing the power of the furnace, Golden Crow Princess got rid of gravity, flying to the battlefield of gods created by Hura's god power. In the burning battlefield of gods, a beautiful golden red bird was happily spreading its wings, waiting for the return of its incarnation. The next thing she would do was to activate the coordinates her mom, West Queen, inscribed on her body, so that she could bring Yuan-shi back to the Kunlun God's domain. As Golden Crow Princess imagined that she could be with May every day for thousands of years, she couldn't help but sing. While Golden Crow Princess was confident that everything would be going on as she wished, an ice-blue sword cut open the dividing line between the sky and the earth and hit her forehead. Golden Crow Princess was stunned. It seemed that it took only a second, but was also as long as 1,000 years. When she regained consciousness, Yuan-shi had disappeared from her arms without any trace or sign. Who is it? Who stole my May? Golden Crow Princess incarnation and true body instantly merged into one, making an angry roar in the sky. The order in the battlefield of gods was totally messed up. The fire of the sun burst out from the furnace, drive, which was more unbridled than it had just been in the battle with Hura. This time, its power was really going to be used to destroy the world. You can't take him away. The guardian of the Sky Tower, Lilibet, looked at the angry Golden Crow Princess indifferently. In her arms, sweat streamed down Yuan-shi's face. Who are you? Do you want to grab May with me? Golden Crow Princess stared at Lilibet in a murderous manner. Go back. Calm down. No one can violate the rules. Golden Crow Princess battle with Hura before was allowed by the rule of the sacrificial ceremony, so Lilibet wouldn't put her hands in it. However, it was another thing that Golden Crow Princess wanted to take away the Master of Star Go by coercive means. Lilibet, the guardian of order, would not allow this to happen. Golden and red flames were burning, and pillars of fire rose into the sky one after another, causing numerous firestorms to rage between heaven and earth. The basic particles of yellow, red, blue turned into giant spirals one after another, spinning at high speed. 7-color lightning that never appeared in the White Lotus Sword domain before jumped happily among the clouds. Colorful light penetrated through the battlefield of gods, illuminating the sky of the White Lotus Sword domain. A new sun suddenly appeared in the dusk of the White Lotus Sword domain. That was Golden Crow Princess. That was the little sun from the Kunlun God's domain. However, the area covered by this sun was completely confined by a circle of ice-blue brilliance in the upper part of the White Lotus Sword Palace. All lightning and storms stopped abruptly at one line, as if it was a field God had designated for them, and they could not take a step past. The edge of the lightning seemed so magnificent, its numerous branches seemed to extend beyond the sky of the White Lotus Sword domain. But the ice-blue wall completely blocked these lightning storms, standing as an unbreakable wall. "Give my May back! Give my May back! Give my May back!" Watching Yuan-Shi being snatched away from her arms, Golden Crow Princess lost her sanity. As the princess of the Kunlun God's domain and the youngest daughter of West Queen, she had never experienced such a setback. Never. Even the Sunwalker, Hura, had to run away in the face of her. Who would have thought that the guardian of the door would suddenly stop her? "I decline." Lilibet looked indifferently at Golden Crow Princess. Apart from May, Golden Crow Princess could bring away anyone. After all, perhaps no one would refuse this opportunity to go to the Kunlun God's domain. However, May was different. His real identity wasn't inferior to Golden Crow Princess. From the moment he obtained the title, the Master of Stargo, he had become a signboard of the Sky Tower. Naturally, Lilibet wouldn't turn a blind eye to it if anyone dared to kidnap him. Even though Golden Crow Princess was the youngest daughter of West Queen, apparently, her value wasn't as high as the Master of Stargo. If Yuan-Shi was really willing to leave with Golden Crow Princess, she wouldn't interfere with this kind of thing. But if Golden Crow Princess wanted to take him away by force, she would stop her. "You're bringing about your own destruction." Golden Crow Princess burst into a rage and turned back to her true form, a golden red bird. She cried into the air, "No one can rob me of my thing." The battlefield of gods melted once again. The earth's crust was easily burnt through by the fire of the sun, and then turned into a sea of lava. Like the real ocean, the lava ocean was vast and boundless. Holding Yuan-Shi, who was totally flabbergasted, in her arms, Lilibet held the Sword of Order and walked to Golden Crow Princess, gently pointing the sword tip on her forehead. "Go back to where you come from. Forget the things that happened today, little Sun Princess." The next second, everything began to rush, as if lost time was suddenly released from its cage. Countless visible fragments exploded and blasted around Golden Crow Princess. "I'll be back." She made a terrifying roar, and her whole body was absorbed by the fragments and disappeared little by little from the battlefield of gods. This was expulsion. Her body was returning to where she came from under the guidance of Lilibet's power. This was also the last step in the sacrificial ceremony, sending the god away. However, the performer was replaced by Lilibet. Golden Crow Princess couldn't resist the rules of the sacrificial ceremony, so that Lilibet could drive her away by a brandish of her sword. In the face of the guardian of the Sky Tower, the young Golden Crow Princess finally paid the price and was taught a lesson. Lilibet used her method to tell her that power wasn't everything. There was a great distance between them in the use of their own powers. "Thank you. We should leave now also. I'm afraid that our little princess will make a tremendous row after returning to the Kunlun God's domain." The two fantastic creatures who also came from the Kunlun God's domain, Yinglong and Bifong, stopped hiding and appeared in front of Lilibet. They bowed to her and then disappeared from the battlefield of gods again. As the guardian of the Sky Tower, Lilibet protected the orders of the Sky Sword God's domain from the age of the twilight of the gods. She deserved their salute. Her age was even older than most of the fantastic creatures in the Kunlun God's domain, and she had begun to guard the Sky Tower before the Sky Sword God's domain was formed. If it wasn't because she had to follow an unknown rule, protecting the Sky Tower and the Sky Sword God's domain, she would have been able to become a real god long, long ago. Amongst all Sky Swords, she was probably the most special one. She never interfered in the daily life of the Sky Sword God's domain. But once anyone dared to break the order in the Sky Sword God's domain, she would appear and prevent the worst situation from happening. Go back. Here. It's not a place you should come now. You can come back after you reach the legend rank. After expelling Golden Crow Princess back to the Kunlun God's domain, Lilibet lowered her head and looked down at Yunxi. Thank you. Lilibet. Yunxi really didn't know what he should say now. Being held tightly in her arms, Yunxi could even clearly feel the arc and softness of her breasts. To Yunxi's surprise, her body wasn't as cold as her ice-blue sword at all, but very soft and comfortable, as if he had returned to his mother's embrace. He had never had this feeling from any girls of the Starwing Knights. In the face of the girls of the Starwing Knights, he always had a feeling that he needed to protect them. But in the face of Lilibet, he longed for her protection. And she did have that power for protection. Yunxi didn't understand how she could freeze time in the battlefield of gods before. Maybe that was the power of order? The power to balance everything and turn everything around? To you. You still have a long life. Your life has just begun. Don't worry. I'll protect you. Rarely did she say a lot of words, except for this time. After that, she let go of Yunxi and gave him a gentle push. The next moment, Yunxi was surrounded by countless silver-blue particles. It's so warm. The silver-blue particles weren't cold at all. Yunxi watched his body falling toward the earth, but he was not afraid of that at all, because Lilibet's power was still protecting him. Under her protection, even if an attack that could destroy the world came, it couldn't harm him. That was the order she held, the gentle and kind power. Under her cold appearance, her will was more firm and powerful than anyone else. For what reason? Do you keep guarding this world? What is this world in your eyes? Why do you have to stay in that silent world, silently looking at the aggregation of the Sky Sword God's domain? Lilibet, what a nice name. It was so great to meet you in the dream. Go back. Lilibet reached out her hand and gave Yunxi a gentle push. The next second, Yunxi began to fall down to the earth from the battlefield of gods. The battlefield of gods finally fulfilled its mission. It splintered like a mirror. Instead, an ice-blue portal stood over above the sky of the White Lotus Sword Domain. It was the door of the Sky Tower. The door connected all sword domains in the Sky Sword God's domain. In the next thousands of years, she would still stand on that beautiful and silent beach as ever, guarding the order of the Sky Tower and the Sky Sword God's domain. Compared with Golden Crow Princess flying speed, the speed of Yunxi falling from the sky was much slower, but it was more realistic. Boundless land, mountains, and oceans appeared in Yunxi's vision and became clearer and clearer in his eyes. His body fell at a high speed, which even caused sparks in the atmosphere. It was impossible for his hero-ranked body to withstand the impact of falling directly from the sky to the ground. However, Yunxi was not afraid of it at all, because his body was being surrounded by silver-blue particles. Being protected by Lilibet's power was the best. He only felt the joy of going back home. The wet sea breeze and the familiar, beautiful scenery all seemed to say welcome back to Yunxi. Oh, he knew where the sense of familiarity came from now, because it was indeed the scenery he knew. Some hidden power in his body stretched out comfortably, releasing a happy atmosphere. The maid's dress automatically disappeared in the air and naturally became another set of clothes. On his face, a silver mask appeared, and above his head, a crown also naturally condensed. It was the mask belonging to the White Emperor. It was the crown belonging to the Water God's bride. The magnificent ruby, the clear sapphire, the profound black obsidian, the sacred moonstone. the colorful diamond, the golden crystal, the silver ice crystal, and a pair of ambers, which looked like a living sailing jellyfish and the butterfly of death. All the gemstones were shining, reflecting each other's color. The White Emperor was back. One sailing jellyfish after another flew in from all directions and fell happily from the sky to the sea together with Yun-Shi. They were singing softly, praising the only emperor in this world. Even the infinite love from millions of people, it wouldn't be more than the love you have granted to him. You have the whole world, but you only love this boy. Even though the world would end in misfortune, you would only offer this boy honor and hope. Welcome back, bride of the great water god. Boom! With a loud sound, Yun-Shi dropped on the surface of the sea like a meteorite falling from the sky. One sailing jellyfish after another happily chased after Yun-Shi falling into the sea. The pressure of the sea water was nothing for these fantastic creatures. The sailing jellyfish represented life. The butterfly of death represented death. The two kinds of fantastic creatures had different postures, but they had the same beauty. They were the symbols of the power of the water god's world. They were proof of Hydra's identity as a god. Their number was increasing, which meant that the aggregate of the water god's fantasy island was expanding. It wasn't his imagination. It was because Hydra was recovering her strength step by step after waking up from the long dream. She was the world, so any changes that happened to her body would naturally change the world at the same time. As she recovered, a lot of creatures who disappeared during the sleeping period had emerged into this world again. After protecting this broken world for thousands of years, Hydra finally harvested the fruits that belonged to her. As the bride of the water god, Yun-Shi had also become one of the harvesters. After dropping into the water god's world, he was accepted and embraced by this world like a child who just returned to his mother's arms. The world was welcoming its child, the little white emperor. Yun-Shi didn't know how deep he had sunk into the deep sea. He could not even tell whether it was 80,000 meters deep or 100,000 meters deep. In a word, it had exceeded the limit that could be observed. At last, the deep sea races around him had become scarce once again. Everything had become quiet. Only the transparent sailing jellyfishes and the butterflies of death still accompanied him. Finally, Yun-Shi arrived at the end. His body seemed to have touched some very soft thing. The silver-blue particles that were protecting him dispersed without a sound. Then Yun-Shi's whole body was plunged into a soft and familiar breath. There seemed to be a soft laugh echoed into his ear. It was the gaze of a great being, who opened her eyes quietly and was full of warm smiles on her face. Hydra, the water god. Yun-Shi naturally understood what this soft thing was. It was the source of Hydra's power, an endless ocean of blood. Here was the god world of Hydra. In other words, this was actually a part of Hydra's body. Perhaps there was no safer place in the White Lotus Sword domain than this place was for Yun-Shi. Lilibet had indeed thrown him into the safest shelter in the whole of the White Lotus Sword domain. Passing through a wide passage, Yun-Shi finally stood on the ground again. Here is... Yun-Shi looked doubtfully at the vast mountain range in front of him. In his sight, there were only mountains at the bottom of the sea, and the outlines of these mountains looked strange. From Yun-Shi's point of view, the mountains seemed to have their own life, releasing a mysterious and ancient atmosphere. Yun-Shi reacted with awe in the face of this holy land. But the next second, the sound of a hurricane whistling completely interrupted Yun-Shi's thought. Hiccup. It was a tremor that was loud enough to trigger a small earthquake. All of the mountains rolled up, releasing earth-shattering shock waves. Yun-Shi's body was blown down. If it wasn't because the sailing jellyfishes around him blocked most of the shock waves for Yun-Shi, he still wouldn't be able to stand up. This can it be? It was not easy for Yun-Shi to control the mist in the air, but he was more shocked by the mountains in front of him. In the blink of an eye, the tremendous earthquake completely changed the shape of the mountains. The whole world was turned upside down. No, the earth wasn't being overturned. Stepping onto the fog created by the White Emperor's mask, She flew to the highest point of this unknown world and finally witnessed the full view of the mountains. They weren't mountains, they were all parts of a giant creature's body. The giant creature turned over in its sleep, which triggered this earth-shattering disaster. And she actually knew who this giant creature was. It was the first fantastic creature who arrived at the water god's world, Ouroboros. But now, Ouroboros' body had grown to a size that was large enough to devour a star, so she didn't relate the mountains to the concept of living things at all. He remembered that before he left the water god's world, Ouroboros' body was only 1,000th the size of this mountain. Maybe this was Ouroboros' true body? When it first appeared in the sky above the water god's world, it shrank its body. Somehow, she thought that this might be the truth. As a strong, fantastic creature, it wasn't surprising to know that Ouroboros had such a big body. Fantastic creatures were the favorites of the rules of the world, and some of them were even the incarnations of some certain rules. A human's common sense meant nothing to fantastic creatures. "Oh my, drink some water and get up." Somehow, Cassina's voice sounded a little distorted, and then a light column shot up to the sky. A big mouth appeared in the sky and tens of millions of tons of seawater fell from the sky, bombarding on Ouroboros' lifeless body. Ouch! 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 Ouroboros made a dying cry and rolled over the ground and began to smoke all over its body. Toxic gas? She smelled the horror toxin that was spreading in the air. The toxic gas could kill millions of people at once, but he had a familiar feeling when smelling it. He knew that he would not be harmed by the toxic gas, because this toxic gas was from the master of this world, Hydra. It was the poison from Hydra that pervaded in the air at this moment. Just a drop of Hydra's poison could kill a group of the strongest hero-ranked people. If a few drops of her poison transformed into toxic gases, they could even wipe out all the living beings in a sword domain. However, there seemed to be something else mixed up in the toxic gas. Is it the aroma of wine? Shi sniffed and analyzed the bouquet in the air. As a hero-ranked baker, he could judge all kinds of food, including wine. After all, there was also wine bread such as red wine bread and rum toast. However, because people in the White Lotus sword domain didn't like to eat bread mixed with wine, Shi hadn't really made this kind of bread before. Ingredients: wine brewed from an unknown liquid, highly poisonous. Level: unknown. Brewing time: unknown. Effectiveness: very horrible poisonous wine. No hero-ranked beings can drink. Not for humans. He couldn't analyze out too many things. The only thing he knew was that this kind of wine was extremely poisonous and could poison millions of people with a single drop. If you made bread with this poisonous wine, he could easily kill any hero-ranked person. After drinking such a poisonous wine, Ouroboros could still struggle to look for water. Are all fantastic creatures' bodies so strong? Goo. Ah. Ouroboros uttered a tearful groan and still murmured, "Again. One more drink. Good, one more drink." It seemed that Cassina was jubilantly pouring wine for the dying Ouroboros. She curiously controlled the mist, flying to the end of the mountain, which was actually the location of Ouroboros' head. Not surprisingly, he saw teacher Cassina and an unknown woman there. Although he had never seen this mature woman, who wore only a transparent robe on her body, she subconsciously knew that she was one of Hydra's best friends, the real body of the mountains under their feet, Ouroboros. Her whole body was wet, and under the wet robe, her beautiful body was clear and distinct. The wet hair sticking on the skin made her look more charming. Her eyes looked as if there were broken stars flashing in her pupils. Although her face looked feeble, her appearance showed a decadent beauty. In her hand, she was holding a glass of bloody wine, and she was trying to drink it. At this moment, she was so drunk that she couldn't even hold the glass of wine. She splashed most of the wine on her fragrant, smooth, round, firm, snow-white and delicate peaks. The bright red poisonous wine dropped on her snow-white skin. It looked like a magic painting that she could barely break his eyes away from. Whoop! What a waste! Ouroboros looked at the poisonous wine falling onto her breasts. She directly pulled open her robe and gently stretched out her tongue, licking the liquor that hadn't yet completely fallen down from her skin. The poisonous wine that could kill millions of people shone brilliantly under Ouroboros' fragrant tongue. The beautiful scene was so seductive that she didn't know where to look at it this time. On the opposite side of Ouroboros, Cassina was also drunk. Although she was not as drunk as Ouroboros, her flushed cheeks revealed her hazy state. Her brown slender legs had long been free from the hindrance of shoes and socks. On the round and beautiful toes and the bows of the feet, they were full of bright red wine. A few drops of bright red wine fell from Cassina's lips to the instep of her feet, attracting Ouroboros' eyes. Wine! Ouroboros licked her lips and kissed Cassina's smooth ankle. Cassina's beautiful toes, soles, foot arch. As long as they were stained with wine beads, Ouroboros licked them all clean and didn't let go of a drop of wine. Looking at the beautiful bare feet, Yunshi's heart suddenly beat faster. You're too drunk. Ouroboros! Cassina drank another glass of poisonous wine without batting an eyelid, then kicked Ouroboros with her toes. Let me die! Ouroboros sank down beside Cassina's ankle with a lifeless look. Even with such a decadent look, her body still naturally emitted a seductive charm. Hot. After drinking another glass of poisonous wine, it seemed that Cassina had also reached a critical point of her drinking capacity. She stabbed her sword, the sands of time, into the ground. Cassina shook her head and was going to take off her clothes to dissipate heat. Anyway, they were in Hydra's secret wine store. Apart from her and Ouroboros, there were no other people. She stared at teacher Cassina skillfully taking off her clothes. Why are you so skillful? Compared with Ouroboros' morbid state, Cassina's skin showed a different beauty, healthy and flexible. Moreover, she had a pair of long legs that could make anyone envy. Looking at the snow-white skin and brown skin, the world in Yunshi's eyes suddenly became blurred, and he vaguely heard a slight laugh from nowhere. Yunshi looked dully at Cassina, who was slowly taking off her clothes. There was still some liquor on her skin, which made his mouth dry and almost couldn't believe his eyes. He knew that teacher Cassina indeed loved to drink, however, he never saw her getting drunk before. He saw it with his own eyes that even after drinking 10 barrels of wine, teacher Cassina's face only became blushed a little. She would never be so drunk that she had to take off her clothes to dissipate heat. Is it because of the wine? Yunshi smelled the bouquet of the wine in the air. It was indeed a good wine that even his hero-ranked food identification capability couldn't identify. Think about it carefully. Even Ouroboros, whose body was as large as a star, was drunk after drinking the wine. It wasn't surprising to see teacher Cassina also getting drunk. No wonder that when he returned from the Sky Tower, he didn't find teacher Cassina. She actually came here to drink. Did she forget that he had to report to her about his 100 victories in a row on the Starry Sky chessboard? No, that can't be. She shook his head and ran to Cassina, stopping her from taking off her bra. White Emperor. Cassina squinted her eyes and raised her finger to shake between her eyes, as if she was measuring the distance between herself and Yunshi. Teacher Cassina, you are drunk? Yunshi accidentally touched Cassina's smooth back, which made his heart suddenly beat faster. Drink. Oh, it seems that I drank too much. Cassina touched Yunshi's forehead and pinched his face. Why do I feel like you have grown up? She asked with a puzzled look. Really? Yunshi looked at his own body. He couldn't find any parts that had grown up. Silly boy. I mean, you have become stronger. Cassina took a deep breath. Instantly, the alcohol in her whole body was forced to be dissipated bit by bit. This was a waste. For legend-ranked beings, only very few materials could affect the states of their bodies. Taking Cassina as an example, although she liked wine, All wines that hadn't been stored more than 100 years were actually as flavorless as water. No matter how good the brewing material was and how high the grade of the winemaker was, if there was no trace of time in the wine, she couldn't taste anything from the wine. To great existences such as Casina and Ouroboros, only the wine that had been stored more than 1,000 years could make them feel physically and mentally pleasant. And the wine that could make them get drunk was even rarer in the endless gods' domains. Amongst all the wines in the world, Hydra's poisonous wine, which was brewed with her own venom and had been stored thousands of years, could be called the highest-ranked enjoyment in the endless gods' domains. Otherwise, Ouroboros and Casina wouldn't be so drunk that they forgot the time to go back and almost could not wake up. Hydra wasn't just a water god, she was also a legend-ranked winemaker. Even back to the age of the gods, this was a rare career. Only the strongest legend-ranked beings could enjoy the poisonous wine made of her own blood and venom. Casina had come to Hydra's treasury to look for something useful for Yunshi's future. As a result, she encountered Ouroboros and was tempted by her words, sneaking into Hydra's wine cellar together. Fortunately, compared to Ouroboros, Casina's drinking capacity was big. After stealing and drinking countless barrels of Hydra's poisonous wine, she was still not totally drunk, so that Yunshi could awaken her. Good. That's all right. After dispelling about half of the alcohol in her body, Casina's eyes became clear again. As for why she didn't dispel all the alcohol in her body, because it was Hydra's legend-ranked poisonous wine. It would be a great pity if she dispelled all of it. She clearly knew that she may not have another chance to sneak into Hydra's wine cellar and steal her wine again. White Emperor, have you completed the challenge in the Sky Tower? When Casina wasn't drunk, she was a very serious and responsible teacher. At the first moment, she asked Yunshi about his test in the Sky Tower. Thank you, Teacher Casina. I have successfully achieved 100 victories in a row. Yunshi proudly stretched out his hand and showed her the 2 shining soul jades in his palm. I won 2 soul jades as my reward. Casina looked cheerfully at the 2 soul jades. Soul Jade of Innocence. The owner can store his memory in the jade. Even if the owner's existence was totally wiped off from the universe, his memory in the soul jade wouldn't disappear. Soul Jade of Holy Light. Put on this soul jade, and you can obtain a light-type talent. Good, he did well. He deserves to be my disciple. Not only is he physically gifted, but he is also very lucky. Soul Jades has only a 10% possibility to appear to be a reward. He could actually obtain 2 top-class Soul Jades as the reward. Wait a minute, 2 top-class Soul Jades? Casina showed a doubtful expression on her face. In the Battle Gods Championship contest, everyone would get a reward after achieving 100 victories in a row. Casina had achieved countless victories in the Sky Tower, but she only obtained Soul Jades as rewards several times. Yunshi not only obtained 2 Soul Jades as rewards, but also both of them were top-class Soul Jades. It's incredible. White Emperor, how many times have you achieved 100 victories in a row? Just once. I achieved 100 victories in a row on the Starry Sky chessboard and chose the 2 Soul Jades as my reward. Yunshi innocently looked at Casina. Huh? The Starry Sky chessboard? You went to the Starry Sky chessboard? Casina was speechless. Yes, and I also got the title of the Master of Star Go. Yunshi was an honest child. At least, he had no intentions of lying in front of Casina. The Master of Star Go? Casina suddenly wondered if she had been drunk and slept in Hydra's wine cellar for several years. Is the Starry Sky chessboard a place for any people with a healthy mental state? TU. What equipment did you use? Casina was trying hard to think about what equipment could help her disciple to participate in the game of the Starry Sky chessboard. However, although she had won innumerable legend-ranked equipment in the Battle Gods Championship contest, she really didn't know which equipment could be useful in this situation. Her disciple hadn't even stepped across the door of the hero rank yet. How could he enter the Starry Sky chessboard? Equipment? Does it exist? Yunshi looked at his teacher innocently. He had never entered the Battle Gods Championship contest, so he didn't know that his teacher had prepared countless legend-ranked equipment for him there. For example, there were weapons called Infinity Edge. After equipping 6 Infinity Edges, they would combine into a killing suit, which could make the equipper's critical strike chance reach 120%. Or, after equipping 6 Black Cleavers, the Black Cleaver Alliance suit could reduce your opponent's defense to 0. 6 Thornmails could combine into a Bloody Barrier suit, which could reflect back the opponent's attack with 180% magic power. 6 Frozen Hearts could combine into an Ice Crown suit, which had an ice-sealed aura that could reduce the attack speed of nearby enemies by 99%. In addition to these, there was also a Firestone suit made of 6 boots of mobility could let the equipper flash around the earth. Any of these suits were rare legend-ranked equipment. If Yunshi equipped them all, he would be literally invincible in the Sky Tower. That's why Cassina was confident that even a newbie like Yun, she could achieve 100 consecutive victories in the Battle Gods Championship contest. However, she didn't expect that he would go to the Starry Sky chessboard. She thought carefully and remembered that there were indeed equipment that could increase the wearer's intelligence. Are you sure that you didn't use the Little Red Riding Hood suit? Cassina vaguely remembered that amongst all the suits she had, there was indeed a Little Red Riding Hood suit made by combining 6 Banksy's Death Caps. A Banksy's Death Cap could increase magic power by 120 points and raise mental power by 35%. And after combining 6 Banksy's Death Caps, the Little Red Riding Hood suit had 3 effects. 1. This suit can increase the equipper's magic power by 1,000 points and raise the equipper's mental power by 500%. 2. The equipper will be transformed into a 14-year-old golden-haired girl, who can cause 3 times hit to any dark-type creatures. 3. The equipper's attributes to werewolves are weakened, and the attributes of vulnerability to wild animals are acquired. Warning: the girl with Little Red Riding Hood needs to keep their distance from the uncaged wrath of Zon. Cassina had experimented with this suit before. After wearing this suit, the equipper would automatically trigger the transformation effect and gain powerful magic power. Moreover, it was a rare equipment that had 0 requirement for the equipper's rank. However, only a pure girl can equip this suit, and once you put it on, you couldn't take it off for a lifetime unless you had found a more powerful suit than this suit. That was to say, if you were chosen by this suit, you would become a 14-year-old golden-haired girl for a lifetime. Therefore, this suit also had a nickname, 14 Years Old Forever. It was said that it was made by a god in the ancient age. In addition to the Little Red Riding Hood suit, that god also made a lot of other equipment based on his fantasies, such as glass shoes with infinite melody, crystal crown of eternal sleeping, pumpkin carriage shuttling the world, and 7 matches of mortal prayer. No. Yunshi looked at his teacher in confusion. After he entered the Sky Tower, he went directly to the Starry Sky chessboard. Where was the equipment from? Oh, can it be? You didn't go to the Battle Gods Championship contest? Looking at her disciple's confused expression, Cassina finally discovered the truth. She seemed to have forgotten to tell him that he should go to the Battle Gods Championship contest after entering the Sky Tower. For her, it was common sense to go straight to the Battle Gods Championship contest. Besides the Battle Gods Championship contest, where else in the Sky Tower does she need to go? It seemed that her disciples didn't have this common sense. Well, I took part in the test of the Starry Sky chessboard and won 100 times. I didn't plan to stop after obtaining 100 victories, but the Sky Tower told me that I had obtained the title, the Master of Star Go. Yunshi honestly told his teacher everything that happened before. Starry Sky chessboard. 100 victories in a row. A drop of sweat fell down from Cassina's forehead. Again, she wondered how long she had been drinking. How many years have passed? Even my disciple has obtained the title, the Master of Star Go. The Master of Star Go is a title that isn't inferior to my own title of the Battle God. If people knew that the new Master of Star Go is such a little guy, they will, well, every force in the endless God's domains will want to grab my little disciple away from me. Well, White Emperor, how many people know that you are the Master of Star Go? Cassina couldn't help but pinch Yunshi's cheeks again. This pleasant surprise was so great that it almost became a scare. Apart from you, only the guardian of the Sky Tower knows it. That's good. Remember, you must keep it a secret before you reach the legend rank. Cassina hesitated for a while and warned her lovely disciple. Otherwise, there will be many terrible elder sisters that will try to talk to you and try to take you away. By the way, this wasn't a lie. If Yunshi's identity was exposed, countless forces would try to obtain him at all costs. The secret of the stars was still a great temptation to countless legend-ranked beings. Chapter 559. The Etiquette of the Battle God. 1. It's strange. Why didn't I find that he was such a gifted Star Go player before? No, he couldn't be simply called genius. Even if he was a super genius, it was too incredible to win the title of Master of Star Go at such an age. When you played Star Go, what did it feel like? Cassina was really curious about how her youngest disciple could beat so many legend-ranked wise men on the starry sky chessboard, a place where she didn't even dare to set foot in once. It's very simple. The rules of Star Go are very simple and easy to understand. Yunshi bluntly expressed his feelings. From the beginning to the end, he was enjoying the game. He was extremely grateful to teacher Cassina, because if she hadn't lent him her identity, he would have never been able to enter the Sky Tower, and he probably would never have known that there was such an interesting game in the world. Simple? Cassina recalled her experience when Orfina tried to teach her the rules of Star Go. Every move on the chessboard must be done after thinking twice, and as time went by, the requirements on the player's calculating power would become higher and higher. Eventually, even most common legend-ranked beings couldn't withstand the pressure. All players must advance gradually and entrench themselves at every step. As one of the oldest trials in the Seven Towers, countless people couldn't even pass the entrance test. Otherwise, the starry sky chessboard wouldn't be recognized as the stage of the highest wisdom in the endless gods' domains. Orfina was one of the fanatics who would even forget to eat and sleep when playing Star Go. As for her, she just looked at the rules of Star Go and had known that it wasn't a game for her. To put it bluntly, she could easily beat down 3 Orfina in the Battle Gods Championship contest. However, even if there were 100 of herself, it was impossible to overcome Orfina on the starry sky chessboard. Orfina, the Ruby Princess, God of Wisdom, Black Mage, Duke Rome, Cyber Elf Alpha. Although she had never participated in the trial of the starry sky chessboard, she clearly knew these names, apart from Cyber Elf Alpha. The Ruby Princess, the Pearl of the Dragon God's domain, the Wise Dragon of Star Gemstone, the daughter of Dragon God, her best friend Orfina, the God of Wisdom, one of the oldest gods in the Western Gods domain, and one of the survivors from the Twilight of the Gods. Black Mage, Lord of the Sea of Chaos, the High Priest of the Dark Church, one of the most famous members of the Dark Council. Duke Rome, the Warlord of the Rome Gods domain, the leader of the famous Sacred Legion in the Western Gods domain. As a result, Cyber Elf Alpha defeated all of these legendary people, and her cute disciple defeated Cyber Elf Alpha by an overwhelming advantage. Just listening to Yunshi's words, Cassina could imagine how breathtaking the battles on the starry sky chessboard were. Oh, facing such an opponent, Orfina must be excited to death. Hey, wait a minute. Wasn't my disciple using my identity to participate in the starry sky chessboard? Could Orfina misunderstand that he was me? Cassina had a bad feeling about this. She vaguely realized the truth with a distressed look. Orfina, don't mistake him with me, please. It wasn't me who beat you. Well done. I'm proud of you. Even the most critical teacher would feel happy from the bottom of their heart in the face of such a perfect answer sheet. Although, she gave him the test paper of the Battle Gods Championship contest, and he handed in the test paper of the Starry Sky chessboard. But it doesn't matter. There's only one truth for him to achieve this success. It's all due to her teaching. Oh, I'm really a great teacher. Come on, I'll give you a reward. Since Yunshi had obtained 2 soul jades, Cassina wouldn't be stingy in giving him more rewards. From the beginning, The reason she came to Hydra's treasury was to prepare gifts for Yuan-shi. With this gift, her disciples would never die after 100 days. Put your arms flat, make your body and the ground horizontal, and stretch your legs. Cassina taught Yuan-shi by the hand. Because Cassina had only dissipated half of the alcohol in her body, she squinted her eyes from time to time, and her moves were also a little languid. Without any idea of putting on her shoes and socks, her naked feet directly stepped on Yuan-shi's back. Teacher, is this position a part of the practice? Being trampled under her feet, Yuan-shi's face slightly turned red. Well, keep this position for a while. I'll help you adjust your body. Cassina burped while trampling on Yuan-shi's body with her toes. Although she still looked drunk, every press of Cassina's toes had made Yuan-shi's blood run more smooth. Even a part of his body became excited due to the massage, which made Yuan-shi feel really embarrassed. He swore that he didn't have any strange ideas about teacher Cassina. It was just a simple, natural reaction of his body. Oh, haha, I forgot that you're a man. It's a natural reaction. Cassina laughed and stepped on the end of Yuan-shi's spine with her toes. For an instant, Yuan-shi's whole body seemed to be electrocuted. His body trembled violently and curled up like a crooked prawn. After the electric current went through, another cold current burst from the bottom of his spine and instantly spread to his whole body. Yuan-shi made a strange sound and was almost unable to maintain this posture. If it wasn't because Cassina was stepping on his back, he would have rolled on the ground. Don't be afraid. It's just a natural reaction. You are still too young. You must learn to get used to this sort of stimulus. Cassina teased her lovely disciple while activating the energy in his blood and flesh. Teacher Cassina, this sort of stimulus is too strong. Chapter 560. The Etiquette of the Battle God 2. Don't be nervous. It's just foreplay. The formal one hasn't started yet. Cassina cocked her head, wondering why Yuan-shi had such a strong reaction. The tremor of his muscles was clearly beyond the range that could be called normal. She remembered that when she taught this skill, the etiquette of the battle god, to her other disciples, they all gritted their teeth and endured it. The most exaggerated one even bit through the towel in her mouth. Is it too exciting for him? When she taught other disciples it, they had already reached the hero rank, but Yuan-shi had not yet taken that crucial step. No, that's not the problem. She sat down on Yuan-shi's body, reached out her hand and pinched his ankle, then touched around his foot. Oh, this hand feel. Not to mention common hero-ranked people, even all of her previous disciples didn't have such a perfect body. Yuan-shi screamed because Cassina just held one of Yuan-shi's feet and flicked her fingertips gently in the center of his foot. Gee! After a severe pain, Yuan-shi felt a numbing pain shooting straight from his foot to the top of his head, and that indescribable part became harder and hotter. That kind of sweet, sour, and soft feeling almost made Yuan-shi fly above the heaven and also dropped him into the abyss. He felt extreme pain and happiness at the same time. Teacher Cassina, is this really a part of the practice? Yuan-shi gritted his teeth and tried to shift his attention desperately. One little rabbit, two little rabbits, three little rabbits. That snow-white lovely rabbit. Oh, that obedient little rabbit is making all kinds of attractive gestures in front of me. Whoop, whoop. No, I shouldn't imagine this scene. This is not what a gentleman should do. It's incredible. What medicine did you take? Cassina patiently held Yuan-shi's foot with her palm, and her fingertips kept drawing circles on the sole of his foot. Again, she wondered if she had drunk so much in Hydra's wine store that she had forgotten the passage of time. If it was really the same as my lovely disciple said, Yuan-shi's body had become a perfect body that had both of the advantages of rigid body and soft body. But how could it be possible? No human could have such a terrible talent. Combining the advantages of soft body and rigid body, even she herself mastered this after practicing many, Many years. Where was his rigid body from? She knew that Yunshi's soft body was a blessing from Hydra, but where did his rigid body come from? His rigid body was one of the top-ranked bodies, Diamond Body. If anyone had a Diamond Body, that person could learn and master the skill Super Armor easily. To the people who didn't have the Diamond Body, even the most talented people must spend dozens of years to learn the skill Super Armor. Have you met any fantastic creatures or gods recently? Cassina asked. She was sure that Yunshi hadn't had such a talent before the last time she saw him. Therefore, he must have just obtained the Diamond Body a few days ago. Oh, I have met a lot of fantastic creatures and gods recently. Yunshi forced himself to restrain the boiling desire in his heart. Yes, it was a naked desire. He felt that the desire was going to drive him into a beast at any moment. Teacher Cassina, I can't hold on. Ah, I see. Cassina remembered that her lovely disciple just defeated a lot of fantastic creatures and gods on the starry sky chessboard. Who did it? Who granted him this talent? Doesn't the god know that this isn't a good thing? It's like pulling up seedlings to help them grow. Now, she had to help him redesign his training plan. What a luxurious annoyance to have such a gifted disciple. She pulled Yunshi's feet up and stuck them to her chest. Cassina began to adjust her breathing. Yunshi was puzzled at the beginning, wondering what his feet had touched. When he came to his senses, his cheeks turned red instantly and his toes trembled uncontrollably. He could clearly feel the warm and slippery touch from his feet. That size, that softness, anyone who had experienced them at any time before would never mistake them. Yunshi suddenly had a general concept about the limit of soft body. It was too wonderful of a feeling. He knew that he could never forget it. Don't be afraid. I'll try to be gentle. Cassina's cheeks were a little red, but that was because she was still drunk. Her 10 fingers straightened Yunshi's toes one by one, and then kneaded his toes one by one. Each kneading would send a burning force into Yunshi's body. Hot. It's so hot. In all senses, Yunshi's blood was boiling. Cassina, what are you doing? At this moment, Ouroboros woke up and looked at them with her hazy eyes. She seemed to be awakened by some great mysterious will. Walking, she stumbled to Yunshi. Without even raising his head, Yunshi could see that under the long, transparent robe, a pair of snow-white peaks were close at hand. Ouroboros, don't make trouble. Cassina grabbed Yunshi's feet with both her hands and shook his body skillfully. Yunshi's body shivered all over. Teacher Cassina was so fierce. His whole spine was moaning and groaning, and that part of his body was becoming more vigorous. Hiccup. What an interesting face. Ouroboros didn't recognize who Yunshi was. She giggled and moved her face close to Yunshi's. Little guy, where did you come from? Chapter 561. The Etiquette of the Battle God, 3. Oh, I am Teacher Cassina's disciple. For some reason, looking at Ouroboros' drunken face, Yunshi had a foreboding. As Ouroboros' snow-white face moved closer and closer, the ominous presentiment became stronger and stronger. Oh, what a lovely little guy. Cassina, will you give him to me? Ouroboros pinched Yunshi's cheeks and just didn't let go of him. No, don't even think about it. Cassina resolutely rejected her request. My disciple is destined to step on the highest stage of the Battle Gods Championship contest. If Yunshi followed Ouroboros, his only future was to become a disabled person, because Ouroboros was such a disabled snake that owed a lot of debt and had to sneak around and hide. The only thing that Ouroboros is good at is divination, but this is her natural talent. Even if she wanted to teach other people how to do it, she couldn't find any successful methods. In order to not make Yunshi become another person as disabled as Ouroboros, Cassina didn't mind breaking Ouroboros' spine to teach her a lesson. Oh, stingy Cassina. Ouroboros' real body rolled over on the ground, making the earth tremble and the mountains sway. Hey, how about? Let's elope. Go to a god's domain that nobody can find together, and eat and drink happily there all day. Ouroboros tried to abduct Yunshi. Shuffle. With a sound, Cassina's fingertip brandished in the air, and a jet of blood shot up to the sky. Ah, I'm dying. I'm dying. Ouroboros screamed, because Cassina's fingertip just cut off the tip of its tail. Just in time. You don't mind letting me borrow your blood, right? Cassina glanced at the tip of Ouroboros' tail. Although the blood gushed out from the wound was enough to fill a lake, Ouroboros' true body was as big as a star. The wound was actually barely worth mentioning to Ouroboros. The harm was even lighter than the toxicity of Hydra's poisonous wine. Open your arms and lay on the ground, Cassina said in an indisputable tone, ordering Yunshi to change his posture. The source of heaven and earth. Reverse. Her legs were separated and almost perfectly attached to Yunshi's separated hands. Cassina raised her head slowly and laid her hands on Yunshi's belly, where the blood and energy in his body converged. A huge amount of free energy in the air mixed with Ouroboros' blood and a hint of wine converged towards Cassina's hands. Hot. It's hot. Yunshi felt that his blood was going to explode. Countless hot streams ran through his body like snakes, and then followed a specific route to transfer back and forth in his body. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. With a huge sound of heartbeat, Yunshi's blood was running at a frenzied speed in his body, and a special part of his body also went ballistic. Yunshi was so glad that he was lying on the ground. Otherwise, he was afraid that his pillar would prop up the sky. Just when Yunshi thought he was at his limit, Cassina suddenly exhaled, and all the energy began to revolve around Yunshi's belly and forming a huge whirlpool. The magnificent of sky dance. Several blood-colored jewels appeared in Cassina's palms, and then began to construct a blood-colored crystal at high speed. This was the gift Cassina prepared for Yunshi, a seed that could activate her power in his body when he was facing a life-or-death crisis. This was the core of the etiquette of the battle god seed. Yunshi once obtained a similar seed from the green hippo, but compared to Cassina's seed, it was nothing. The green hippo seed was just a disposable consumable. The battle god seed not only contained Cassina's power, but also could slowly absorb the free energy in the air to recover itself. That was to say, it can be used as many times as Yunshi wanted. At first, Cassina planned to give Yunshi this seed after he reached the hero rank and started to travel around the endless gods' domains. But after knowing that Yunshi would face a crisis that may cause his death in the near future, Cassina decided to put the seed into Yunshi's body in advance. In order to let Yunshi's body become strong enough to withstand the power of the seed, Cassina came to Hydra's treasury and paid a huge price so that she could obtain the precious blood crystal of Hydra, which would be used as the carrier of the battle god seed. However, it was just that Yunshi's body grew faster than Cassina imagined. After obtaining Mumu's diamond body, he had leapt over the most difficult part. Oh, it looks like I can seal more stuff into his body. Cassina smiled and began to transform more of Ouroboros' blood into energy and pour them into Yunshi's body. It would become a trump card to save Yunshi's life. Naturally, the stronger it was, the better it was. She didn't want such a gifted disciple to die 3 months later. With the soul jades to protect Yunshi's soul and the battle god seed to protect his body, Cassina believed that even if Yunshi was facing a legend-ranked enemy, he could easily find a way to survive. It hurts. Cassina, you bleeding me too much. Ouroboros protested. Against violence. Long live peace. Anyway, you'll have to sleep for many years, and the blood will recover when you sleep. Cassina's fingertips crossed the air again. Shuffle. More blood flew to Cassina's hands from Ouroboros' broken tail and turned into energy. Be good, be good. It doesn't hurt at all. Cassina bled Ouroboros and consoled her. treating her as if she was just a 3-year-old child. But it really hurts. Rolling on the ground with tears in her eyes, Ouroboros watched Cassina. It's your delusion. Everything is just a delusion. You drank too much. Cassina lied with a straight face and continued to draw Ouroboros' blood. Whoa, Cassina is a liar. Realizing that resistance was futile, Ouroboros could only lay on the ground and watch Cassina drawing her blood. She also stared at Yuan Shi with an angry look. Soon, she showed a bad smile. Well, Cassina is a fool. Since she loves her disciple so much, I have to do something to him. Boy, do you drink? Finding that Cassina wasn't paying attention to her human body, Ouroboros sneaked up to Yuan Shi's face again and licked his cheek with her little tongue. Well, it's soft, comfortable, and delicious. No. Yuan Shi resolutely shook his head. Are you kidding me? Is it a wine that a hero-ranked baker can drink? A drop of that kind of poisonous wine can kill 10,000s of him. However, just like Ouroboros couldn't resist Cassina, Yuan Shi couldn't resist Ouroboros. It doesn't matter. Let Big Sister teach you how to drink. Drinking is a very, very comfortable thing. No matter how many troublesome debts you have, as long as you drink enough, everything will disappear. Ouroboros proudly declared her creed of life. No, they won't disappear. You are just escaping from yourself. Before Yuan Shi could say no, Ouroboros' soft lips had attached to his lips, and then the fragrant tongue skillfully slid through his teeth and tightly twined with his tongue. Ouroboros' kiss was suffocating, and at the same time, a mellow aroma of wine spread naturally from her tongue. This taste, no toxicity? Yuan Shi was surprised to find that it seemed that the wine had lost toxicity after being drunk by Ouroboros, and also mixed with a sweet odor from Ouroboros' tongue. This was the drinking technique that Ouroboros prided herself on, though it was of no use at all. She could break down the wine she drank into different serums and store them in her body for ready use. The snake was a kind of creature that could store a lot of food in its body at a time and didn't eat anything for many years after that. It was a rare opportunity to drink Hydra's poisonous wine, so after she drank a lot of wine, she broke down and stored the remaining wines in her body. Now what she fed Yuan Shi was the liquid she stored in her body. After being broken down by her body, the wine had lost most of the toxicity and became a liquid that Yuan Shi could drink. Even so, the liquid still retained the aroma of the poisonous wine. Just drinking a sip of the liquid, Yuan Shi's eyes had become fierce, and his tongue suddenly became active. Ouroboros noticed the change, but obviously, her drunk head wasn't able to analyze what had happened. Anyway, it's comfortable, isn't it? Goo. Yuan Shi's face and Ouroboros' face flushed at the same time. Silver silk threads fell between their lips and tongues. Cassina noticed this and frowned. Oh, my disciple is too daring. Although Ouroboros looked so decadent, she was still a famous legend-ranked augur with countless troubles and debts. Could Ouroboros be the cause of my disciple's death after 3 months? Ouroboros encountered an unexpected counterattack. Why is your kiss so skillful, little guy? Speaking of that, I've never kissed someone so intimately before. No. Bet on the prestige of the great Ouroboros. I must make this little guy drunk. Ouroboros secreted more liquid from her mouth and tried to get Yuan Shi drunk. Yuan Shi felt as if the whole world had become floating, this kind of feeling. Oh, it seems to have happened before when he stayed with the mysterious dark elf. In a trance, Ouroboros' appearance also became ambiguous in his eyes. For a moment, she looked like the dark elf that night. For a moment, she looked like his angry childhood sweetheart, Hua Hua. For a moment, she looked like a girl of the Starwing Nights. Ouroboros' plan failed. The more drunk Yuan Shi was, the more enthusiastic he became. He wasn't a person that would topple down to the ground after drinking. At first, she wanted to make Yuan Shi drunk, but now, she was entangled by Yuan Shi. When Yuan Shi's tongue licked her tongue enthusiastically, her body shook and she became ashamed. It wasn't the same thing to kiss him mischievously, then be kissed by him forcibly. She slightly resisted Yuan Shi's tongue, but finally, she gave up resisting. Yunshi's tongue slipped into her mouth full of the fragrance of wine and sucked it heartily. Tea on the other side of the water god's fantasy island, a small region which was also under the deep sea. If the wine store where Yunshi, Casina, and Ouroboros were at was a dreamy paradise, then this must be hell. Flames. Dark green flames continuously shot out from the earth, with lethal and poisonous miasma almost covering the land. From time to time, dazzling green sparks burst out to the sky. If the wine store was Hydra's fond dream, then this region must be Hydra's nightmare. There were good wines in the store that could let legend-ranked beings get drunk, but there were only monsters, and monsters in this nightmare place. A kind of six-legged green lizards were the main inhabitants of the nightmare world. In some sense, they could also be seen as a kind of creatures created by Hydra. There were the bugs whose only function was to clean Hydra's scales. Why is there such a weird world? That was because it represented the dark, terrible side of Hydra's past and the source of the most terrible forbidden zone in the storm eyes. Now, here, a battle was taking place. Boom! The earth was trembling, the sky was shaking, the green and blood-colored lights tore through the clouds, constant sounds of impacts echoed between the sky and earth. There were two people that were fighting. One was a girl who wore the uniform of the Sword Palace with a broken sword in her hand. She was also Yunshi's childhood sweetheart, Hua Hua. Opposite her was a thing that she didn't know whether it should be called a human being or not. Its body roughly looked like a human, but the whole body was covered with a layer of black halos, which completely obscured its true appearance. The only things that could be seen was the green gems on its hands, wrists, and waist, while its hair was in a diamond shape along with a huge diamond-shaped sword in its hand. The shape of this sword wasn't suitable for battle at all. Just like Hua was broken sword, it was a weapon beyond common sense. A green band tightly wrapped around its hand and the sword. It didn't look like a decorative adornment, but more like a part of its body. Who the hell are you? Hua Hua watched this monster and asked in an agitated tone. Several days ago, she was haunted by it and was forced to fight with it. Its strength was really strange. Originally, she was having a secret trial. She went deep into this region for a relic in the sword blade area to search for a treasure. As a result, she was attacked by this monster halfway. And before she realized it, she had been dragged by it into this strange world. She felt as if this green monster was obsessed with her. No matter what she did, it just didn't let her go. And its strength was also becoming stronger and stronger as the battle continued. At first, its strength was only at the 4th rank. But as she continued to increase her strength, its body changed. At first, it looked shorter than she was, but now it was a bit taller than her. Its diamond-shaped sword had been broken by her several times, but it could condense together again each time, getting bigger and thicker. Now, its strength had reached the 5th rank. As for its abilities, they should be just endurance and high-speed recovery and so on. Even if she cut off half of its waist, it could recover with amazing speed. This was definitely not an ability that humans could have. She guessed that it was probably a slime or something else. The green monster tilted and turned its head 360 degrees. It shook its head and raised its diamond-shaped sword again. Several green gems flew out and wrapped around the evil weapon, releasing a chilling breath. What a trouble, Hua Hua frowned. She wasn't really helpless with this fellow. As long as she liberated the true power hidden in her blood, she could kill this monster in seconds. However, she couldn't do that. She couldn't control her hidden power well. If she released the power in her blood without restraint, she would probably tear up the whole of the White Lotus Sword domain. Once she liberated all the power in her blood, even she herself didn't know what she would become. Her wings were not yet old enough to unfold. Puff, puff. The green monster emitted strange sounds of gasping. Its whole body was strongly distorted with a burst of weird laughter. Ha 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 ha. Hee 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 hee. Ha 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 ha. With that chilling laughter, the flying gems melted in the next second and became green flames wrapping around the monster's body. The next second, the monster dragged the sword and rushed forward. Every step it took, the monster would become faster and stronger, as if no matter what was standing in front of its eyes, it would rush over and crush everything. I'm in a bad mood. You're looking for your own death. Hua had been in a very bad mood since the trial started. She felt like something terrible had happened in the past few days. This instinct became stronger and stronger every day, but because she was too far away from the White Lotus Sword Palace, she wasn't sure what was going on around you and she. She just had a growing sense of unease. Little she, you won't play with other girls when I'm not around, will you? It will be okay. No one will find out your real identity. They will only treat you as a maid. There is absolutely no problem. Even so, Hua was still in a restless mood. In contrast to this, the monster was nothing to speak of. However, just now, this mood had reached a new peak. She suddenly felt like her little she was around here, but she couldn't sense his location clearly, as if some invisible force had been hindering her perception. What the hell is going on? This green monster and this strange world were like traps especially prepared for her, full of malice. Who wants to do something to me? It doesn't matter. If this world wants to stop me, then I only need to completely destroy this world. A strand of hair rose high on her head. After she confirmed that She was around, Hua's eyes became fierce. One. It looked as if she was waking up monsters who should not appear in the world. There was a glowing fluorescence in Hua's eyes. Green flames burst into the sky, and the black halo that surrounded the green monster's body broke apart little by little, gradually exposing the monster's real face. It had 6 strange eyes and a face that was quite similar to a lizard. On its forehead, there was a strange flame imprint, which could give any ordinary people a shivering feeling. 2. Hua didn't look at the green monster's real body, because, in her eyes, the green monster was already a corpse. Boom! In the huge green pillar of fire, the monster's size suddenly tripled, turning into a giant lizard over 6 meters tall with black diamond armor bursting out from its spine and a triangular tail wagging behind. 3. Hua held the broken sword in her both hands. A terrible aura spread around her body. Sky flying. The next second, Hua disappeared from in front of the giant lizard, and then the world began to shine. They were the lights of the sword. 7 sword-shaped lights cut open the sky and earth and instantly locked on the giant lizard's body. Before the giant lizard elevated its fighting power to the 6th rank, its body had been torn into pieces. The first sword cut off the lizard's head. The second sword cut off the lizard's right hand. The third sword tore up the lizard's left hand and left shoulder. The fourth sword cut off the lizard's waist. The fifth sword cut tore open the lizard's body from the center. The sixth sword cut off the lizard's 2 legs. The 7th sword cut minced all the remains of the body, turning into blood spraying all over the sky. This was the special killing skill in the Sky Flying Sword, 7 Killing Sword. Only the swordsman who soared freely in the sky could perform this killing skill, which was essentially against the rules of human sword skill. The giant lizard crushed into a pool of blood, leaving only a dozen green gems still tenaciously trying to piece together the blood and flesh on the ground. Hua stared at the green gems and finally found what they were. They were slimes that had never been seen before. The giant lizard-like monster was a mere delusion, essentially a bunch of flesh and blood pieced together by these slimes. When her 7 killing sword tore the giant lizard's body apart, it also cut the slimes up into more than a dozen pieces. However, these slimes had strong, tenacious vitality. Even if they were cut into more than a dozen pieces, they were still alive and trying to revive the giant lizard. Shea Longness? Hua stepped on a creeping green slime, showing a doubtful expression in her eyes. She thought about it and found out that only Shea Longness had the ability to create these slimes as a machine of battle. The moment Hua Hua uttered this name, all the green gem slimes suddenly stagnated and exploded. In the magnificent mushroom clouds, Hua Hua flashed left and right by stepping on the transparent halos she created and finally escaped from the continuous explosions, looking at the devastated land from a height of 10,000 meters. Well, Shea Longness, I remember you. Although Shea Longness was a legend-ranked opponent and the 10th Sky Sword, Hua Hua showed no fear in her eyes. Sky Flying Sword contained unlimited possibility. Even if the opponent was a god, she wouldn't be scared. However, the most important thing now for Hua Hua was not that damn Sky Sword, Shea Longness, but her childhood sweetheart. That strand of hair on her head rotated at a high speed, and Hua was perceived a huge red world. She had never felt such a huge red alarm. She closed her eyes and felt as if she was in a red ocean. Up, down, left, right. As far as she could see, the world was covered in a dazzling red. I see you. Hua Hua held the broken sword in her hands. If she hadn't had such a sensitive jealousy radar, she would never have noticed that there were other red units in this strange world full of red. Little she is absolutely there. This instinct will never go wrong. If the world wants to stop me, then the world must be wrong. Hua Hua shouted at the sky. The sky can't cover my eyes. The earth can't bury my heart. This childhood sweetheart will be the final winner. A column of sword-shaped light crazily bombarded on a barrier between heaven and earth with astonishing momentum. Her little she was there. In Hydra's wine store. Well, the last step. Cassina moved her hands back and inadvertently brushed the rising part of Yuanshi's body with a gentle tremor on her fingertips. Yuanshi's body shook suddenly and his breath became disordered, which made Ouroboros' body also trembled. Boom, boom, boom. It was such a spectacular scene. As if the sky and earth were reversed, the whole world was making an unbearable roar. Ouroboros' giant body rolled, convulsed, trembled, and twisted continuously on the ground. She looked painful and joyful at the same time. After a series of giant earthquakes and landslides, Ouroboros' eyes became empty as if she had comprehended the truth of the universe. Both her real body and the human incarnation were paralyzed on the ground. A great deal of blood gushed out like a tsunami from the wound on the tip of Ouroboros' tail, and then was absorbed by Cassina's hands. Whoa! Woo! I am defiled. Realizing what just happened, Ouroboros looked into the void, feeling empty. She didn't even mind what Yunshi was doing and would do now. The aroma of the wine between their lips and tongues had also become stronger and thicker. The blood-colored crystallization turned into a transparent seed with an hourglass mark on it and was fully integrated into the center of Yunshi's abdomen. There was the source of vitality and blood, and also the place where Golden Dan formed. The form of the Golden Dan was the sign of reaching the highest rank of the Heaven Roads Palace. Obtaining the Golden Dan was equal to obtaining immortality. It was the final goal of all Taoist priests of the Heaven Roads Palace. In some sense, Yunshi's Battle God Seed was an artificial Golden Dan. Over the entire Eastern Gods domains, only Cassina had the ability to create a Battle God Seed for her disciple. After the Battle God Seed successfully condensed in Yunshi's body, Cassina stretched herself leisurely and stood up. She looked at Yunshi and Ouroboros and whistled. Well, you two, don't play too long. I'll go to sleep for a while. Having drunk so much and finding that her disciple had unexpectedly solved the hidden danger in his soul, Cassina felt that it was really a good day today. So, to celebrate it, why don't I go to drink the remaining wine in Hydra's wine store? Cassina thought and disappeared in the blink of an eye. What a piece of luck. Ouroboros can't leave now, so it's the best time for me to collect all the remaining wine. Cassina, don't go. Now Ouroboros finally knew what it meant to lift a brick and smash your own foot. She was just drunk and wanted to tease Cassina's cute disciple. Why did she become the person who was bullied? I must strongly condemn and resolutely oppose this kind of bullying behavior. I'm the great Ouroboros, the fantastic creature who can observe the river of time. How can such a great woman be bullied by a masked man? Yes, it's the world's fault, not mine. She felt dizzy, which seemed not only because he had drunk too much wine from Ouroboros' mouth. Hot. It's so hot. After the battle god seed flew into his body, he found that the flow rate of his blood didn't slow down but began to accelerate. If Cassina was here, she would naturally tell her cute disciple that this was a normal phenomenon. He felt that his body was dry and hot, which was actually the signal that the battle god seed began to exert its power to promote the circulation of his blood. The process of adapting to the power of the battle god seed was also the process of practicing the battle god genre. As the trump card that could be used to save his life, the greatest effect of the battle god seed was to accelerate the flow rate of his blood. Those who have acquired the battle god seed would inevitably embark on the road of endless battles to release and absorb the power in the battle god seed. Well, Cassina had just forgotten that there were some differences between men's and women's bodies. To women, increasing the flow rate of their blood could increase their battle power at the same time. However, to men, the battle god seed had some side effects. For example, some indescribable problem that now plagued Yunshi. As the kiss continued, this problem was getting worse and worse, and finally reached that irremediable point. Shuffle. Ouroboros suddenly trembled all over, because her whole body was just embraced by Yunshi. Then they rolled on the ground and Yunshi rode on her body. Jie. Ha! Yunshi gasped heavily with a painful look and then stared at Ouroboros, whose body felt weak and could barely move a finger at this time. Cassina, come and save me. I will be bullied again. Ouroboros was going to cry. As a fantastic creature whose body was as large as a star, why do I have no resistance at all in the face of this situation? Well, I must have drank too much. Yes, I must be hallucinating. Why did Cassina's cute disciple begin to take off his clothes? Wait, what's that? What's that big, tough, fierce thing that's standing up almost at his belly button? Ah, why does Cassina's disciple have such a big thing? Ouroboros' eyes and mouth opened wide. Even her vertical snake pupils turned into silly circles. She rudely approached her and pushed her down, and that heroic, high-spirited, indescribable part of his body was completely stuck between Ouroboros' beautiful, slender legs. Ah! Ouroboros screamed and finally realized what a bad situation she was going to endure. If she knew that Cassina's cute, obedient disciple would suddenly become so violent, she would have never teased him. She didn't think too much, because the battle god seed was constantly providing him an endless stream of energy. Ironically, the original source of the energy was from Ouroboros' blood. To Ouroboros, it was just a negligible part of the blood in her true body. But being absorbed by the battle god seed, it could offer Yunshi endless vitality. Help, Cassina. This is my first time. That big thing. It can't get in. In Hydra's wine store, the pitiful and heart-beating sound echoed. Ouroboros never thought that she would one day encounter a great crisis for her chastity. After all, she was a fantastic creature, a great augur. No one would expect that there was anyone who could bully her in the endless god's domains. Help, Cassina. Ouroboros struggled hard, looking like a saltwater fish nailed to the beach. More than once, her final barrier had almost been broken. If it wasn't because that Yunshi's mind had also become cloudy, he would have already succeeded and enjoyed Ouroboros' wonderful body. Cassina, 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 I'll give you everything. Make your disciple stop. Ouroboros shouted with despair. Finally, she made a decision. Transform. She decided to transform her human form back into the snake form. If she succeeded, at any rate, Casina's disciple couldn't do anything to a snake, and her chastity could be saved in this way. Ouroboros thought so and started to do it. Unfortunately, she failed. No, it wasn't a total fail. To be exact, it was a half success. She forgot that she was drunk, so control of her forces was very bad right now. Only her legs turned into a snake tail, but her body didn't become a snake and still kept the human form. Because of her transformation, the robe that had wrapped her body was broken by the snake tail, revealing her snow-white peaks and that mysterious area. Ah! Ouroboros desperately tried to cover her soft, snow-white peaks with both hands. Instinctively, she tightly wrapped her snake tail around Yuanshi's whole body. For the vast majority of people, this situation was extremely dangerous. However, Yuanshi wasn't one of them. Because of his experience on the Water God's Fantasy Island, because of the Lamia Queen and many other lovely Lamia girls, he was very experienced in dealing with this situation. Yuanshi's hand easily touched the place that should not be touched, and then pinched, kneaded, dug, and then Ouroboros' body completely softened and relaxed. Her hands covered her breasts, and her eyes became watery. Why are you so skilled? Oh. Ouroboros desperately found that her body became totally weak and limp. Yuanshi blinked and continued. The days and nights with the Lamia Queen and the other enthusiastic Lamia girls had already let him master the skills of dealing with snake tails. Those enthusiastic Lamia girls often wrapped more than one snake tail around him and courted him. The Lamia Queen herself also seemed to like this unique way of mating. Compared with Ouroboros, who had zero experience at all, they had much more experience with Yuanshi. Ouroboros never thought that her last salvation was a total fail. If she was still in her human form, at least, she could still struggle. At least, she could hypnotize herself into thinking that this wasn't her true body, so she could think she didn't lose anything. However, in this snake tail form, she couldn't do any struggling. Not only her body, but even her soul was also about to fall. Why is this so comfortable? If she wasn't drunk, she had 10,000 methods to kill him, but now even resistance was almost impossible. Her body became weak and limp. This was a sensory stimulus she had never experienced before, as if there were innumerable electric currents wandering through her body. Where Yuanshi's fingers touched, her body trembled. The long snake tail couldn't exert the crushing pressure of squeezing, but she felt like she was being touched all over, shaking with the rhythm of his fingers. Whoa! No! Her voice no longer panicked but groaned with a sweet gasp. A door to a new world was slowly opening to Ouroboros. It was a decadent and intoxicating world. By the time Yuanshi's lips covered Ouroboros' lips again, Ouroboros' groan had become sweet and attractive, as intoxicating as the wine secreted from her mouth. Well, it's about the time. Somehow, Yuanshi naturally understood that it was time to eat Ouroboros. Just like in the past times, he ate those shy Lamia girls. You little bastard. Ouroboros also perceived that her body seemed to be ready for all kinds of happy mating postures. Alas, it's all the fault of Phoenix. That divination Phoenix asked for almost took half her life, and she still hadn't recovered yet. Otherwise, how would it be possible to be taken advantage of by others? After finding an unreasonable excuse for it, Ouroboros bit on Yuanshi's shoulder and left deep teeth marks there. It's a curse from Ouroboros. Even if Yuanshi ran to the ends of the earth, he can't get rid of it. Boom! The sky was torn by a sword, and Hua saw at first glance that her childhood sweetheart was being bitten by a dangerous snake. And they were both naked. How dare you? Looking at her lover being bitten by a poisonous snake. Even though the poisonous snake was so huge, she couldn't stop the anger in her heart. Sky-flying bloodline has no fear. Whether the opponent was a god or a fantastic creature, she didn't mind at all. She was born to surpass all restraints and obtain unlimited freedom. Holding the broken sword in her both hands, Hua Hua completely liberated her power. An astonishing momentum emanated from her petite body. I will kill you. Without any divination, Ouroboros could clearly see Hua Hua's killing intent in her eyes. I'm so miserable. Ouroboros only wanted to cry. I'm the victim. I'm the one who is going to be eaten, okay? Run away. Run away. Just take Cassina's disciple and escape far away from this world, and go to a place where nobody can find us. Then I can have him all to myself? Well, that's a great idea. Anyway, I have had a lot of debts. It doesn't matter if I have to find a new creditor. Boom. Boom. Using the last of her strength, Ouroboros moved her true body in front of herself as a barrier to stop Hua Hua. She was ready to flee. For any hero-ranked beings, it was impossible to cause any damage to her legend-ranked fantastic creature body. If one's attack wasn't as strong as Cassina's, even if she was attacked by 100 hero-ranked beings, none of them could destroy a scale on her body. However, although she didn't divine, she had an ominous feeling that she couldn't run away. No, how could this be possible? How could a human hurt me? She is just a little girl, not Cassina. Looking at Ouroboros' enormous body move over, the enormous snake tail looked like a group of mountains joining together and floating in the air. Hua Hua's eyes become more combative. Are you wanting to flee? No way. I won't let you. Even if I have to destroy this world, I will not allow this shameless bitch to take my little she away. Let me show you the real horror of Sky-Flying Sword. Unlock the first sequence, the second sequence. Liberate the blasphemous words. Since the opponent was a fantastic creature, she would naturally raise the power of her Sky-Flying Sword to the legend rank. Blasphemous words was a horrible killing skill for this attack. Its attack power was deadly even to legend-ranked beings. In the name of the Sky-Flying Sword, I declare that you can't defend yourself against this sword. In the name of the Sky-Flying Sword, I declare that you can't avoid this sword. Numerous complex runes emerged from Hua Hua's body, which were the blocks imposed on her body, the seals of her Sky-Flying bloodline. They were the shackles of her body, but also the props that could let her move freely in the mortal world. If she released all the power contained in her Sky-Flying bloodline, she couldn't even enter any mortal world. The power of her Sky-Flying bloodline was too strong. Before she could really control this power, she had to seal it. Essentially, Hua Hua was like a god who bounded her strength into a human body. The human body was only a carrier. Once her Sky-Flying bloodline was fully awakened, her life form would transform into a totally different form. At this moment, what Hua Hua did was to open the blocks and push open a slit of the door of the Sky-Flying bloodline, releasing a trace of the indescribable power behind the door. Sky-Flying Sword was the key to open the door of power, and this key had always been held in her hands. However, she never expected to push open the door before. Why? Behind the door, the power was so strong that it could let her defeat Ouroboros easily. As long as she pushed open the door bravely, she could instantly reach the legend rank. However, she just didn't want to open it, because beside her, her childhood sweetheart was always staying with her. She didn't want to leave him. Once she opened the door, these happy days would come to an end. If she opened the door, she could no longer stay in the mortal world and must go back to the place where Sky-Flying bloodline was derived from and accept her ultimate mission. And now, she opened a crack in the door. It was also because of Yun Shi. She couldn't imagine that her little she was taken away by others. There was no reason for her to stay in this world if she lost her little she. She needed that power now. Just a trace of the power. The instant Hua Hua murmured the blasphemous words, the sky and the earth became bloody red. Obscurely, a pair of huge eyes across countless stars, watching her from infinity. It's the abyss, its destruction, its life, its rebirth. It's a huge will woven by innumerable rules. Being watched by the pair of eyes, something was going to break out from Hua Hua's back, but she desperately stopped its appearance. The broken sword in her hand had long been transformed into countless particles and eventually into a blood-colored lightsaber that seemed to have the power to cut the world open. That's not a delusion. After being enchanted by the blasphemous words, the sword had temporarily acquired the attribute of perdition. At this moment, it was a veritable god weapon that could easily destroy a world. Oh my God, it's the blasphemous words. Are all these little guys nowadays all monsters? Feeling the fierce aura from the blood sword in Huahua's hands, Ouroboros' legs felt weak and she could barely stand up. Yes, I'm at the legend rank, but I'm just an augur, not a warrior. Why do I have to fight against this monster? Huahua didn't know and didn't care what Ouroboros was thinking. She just brandished her sword at Ouroboros. She was serious. She was really going to kill this snake? Not long ago, Casina cut open Ouroboros' tail and drew a great amount of blood. And this time, under Huahua's attack, her tail was completely chopped off. The fierce pain made her roll over on the ground and cry sadly. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.